Imagine standing in a place where the stones beneath your feet seem to hum with ancient secrets, where the wind carries echoes of a forgotten tongue, and where the very elements around you, earth, air, fire, and water, feel like characters in a story waiting to be told. There's a hidden language woven into the fabric of our world, one that ancient civilizations understood intimately. They didn't just see rocks and rivers, they saw symbols, messages, and divine conversations. They built monuments that whispered to the stars, designed temples that channeled the energy of storms, and carved sanctuaries that honored the dance of flame and flood. This wasn't mere architecture, it was a dialogue with the universe itself, a lost language of the elements that connected humanity to the cosmos in ways we're only beginning to grasp. Today, we're setting out on a journey to rediscover that language. We'll explore 24 enigmatic ruins scattered across the globe, from the misty highlands of Scotland to the sun-scorched deserts of Peru, each one a chapter in this elemental story. These sites are more than just crumbling stones. They're living libraries of myth, science, and spirit. They hold clues to how our ancestors interpreted the forces of nature not as separate phenomena, but as parts of a unified, sacred whole. Through their eyes, fire wasn't just a tool, it was transformation. Water wasn't just a resource, it was emotion and renewal. Earth was stability and memory, while air was intellect and connection. This video is your invitation to step into their world, to see landscapes as texts and ruins as verses in an epic poem written long ago. We'll delve into the symbolism carved into these structures, unravel the mysteries encoded in their alignments, and uncover the profound connections between mythology and the natural world. By the time we reach the end, you won't just look at ancient sites the same way. You'll feel the presence of that elemental language in the world around you, maybe even in the breeze outside your window or the flow of a nearby stream. This isn't just a history lesson, it's a rediscovery of a way of seeing, a key to understanding how humanity once conversed with the universe. So settle in, open your mind, and let's begin this journey together, starting with the first ruin that awakened the world to the whispers of the elements. But what exactly is this elemental language we're about to explore? It's more than just a poetic metaphor. It's a foundational system of thought that shaped entire civilizations. Across the ancient world, from the philosophers of Greece to the sages of China, people observed the natural world and saw within it a set of primal, governing forces. The Greeks gave us the classic quartet: earth, air, fire, and water. In the East, the Chinese Wu-Xing system, often translated as the 5 elements or 5 phases, encompassed wood, fire, earth, metal, and water, emphasizing a dynamic cycle of transformation and interaction rather than static building blocks. These weren't merely a primitive periodic table, they were a profound philosophical framework. Earth represented stability, nourishment, and the physical body. Air symbolized intellect, communication, and the unseen realm of spirit. Fire was transformation, passion, and divine energy. Water embodied emotion, intuition, and the flow of life itself. Each element was a character in a cosmic play, a deity with a personality, a force that could be harnessed, respected, and communicated with. This world, you wasn't confined to dusty scrolls, it was lived experience. It dictated the layout of cities, the timing of harvests, and the forms of worship. Renowned mythologist Joseph Campbell spent his life tracing these universal patterns, showing how elemental symbolism is the very bedrock of our most enduring creation myths. A volcano isn't just a geological feature, it's the anger of a fire god. a river isn't just water, it's the tears of a goddess or the path of a serpent spirit. This personification created a rich lexicon, a vocabulary of the cosmos that ancient architects and builders used as their blueprint. When they raised a temple, they weren't just stacking stones. They were writing a prayer in granite, aligning it with the solstice sun to capture a sliver of fire, or channeling an underground spring to let the voice of water sing within its walls. They encoded celestial knowledge into alignments, choosing specific materials believed to hold certain energies, and designing spaces that mirrored mythological narratives. This was their method of communication, a dialogue with the divine, a way to mark sacred time, and a means to preserve profound knowledge for generations who would know how to read the signs. So as we turn our attention to the first of these enigmatic sites, we carry this lens with us. We're not just looking at old rocks, we're learning to read. We're listening for the stories told in the alignment of a monolith with a star, in the choice of stone quarried from a sacred mountain, or in the way the wind whispers through a specially designed passage. The language of the elements is waiting, etched into the landscape, and it begins in the misty isolation of the Scottish Isles. Our journey into the language of the elements begins not with a roar, but with a whisper, a soft, persistent hum carried on the misty winds of the Scottish Isle of Lewis. Here, the Kalanish stones rise from the peat bog like the bones of the earth itself, a hauntingly beautiful arrangement of grey granite monoliths set in a cross-shaped pattern with a central circle. Erected over 5,000 years ago, around the same time as the earliest phases of Stonehenge, this is one of the most atmospheric and complete Neolithic complexes in all of Europe. But to call it a mere calendar or observatory would be to miss its deeper voice. This is a place where the elemental dialogue between air and earth is etched into the very landscape. The arrangement itself is a grammatical structure in this ancient language. The central circle, with its towering focal stone nearly 5 meters tall, is flanked by avenues of stones running to the north, south, east, and west, while a later burial chamber was added to the east, suggesting a site that evolved over centuries of use. Archaeoastronomers have long studied its alignments, noting how the southern avenue points towards the setting of the midwinter moon, a cycle that only completes itself every 18.5 years. This connection to the lunar cycle is profoundly tied to the element of air, to the intangible, the cyclical, the intellectual patterns of timekeeping and celestial observation. It speaks of a people who look to the heavens, to the breath of the sky, to mark the passage of seasons and to understand their place in the cosmos. Yet these stones are also deeply of the earth. They are Lewisian gneiss, some of the oldest rock in the world, quarried locally and dragged to this specific, seemingly chosen site. Their sheer physical presence, their weight and permanence, ground the site in the element of earth, symbolizing stability, endurance, and the fertile potential of the land. This creates a powerful elemental synergy. The air, with its intellectual and celestial associations, meets the earth with its physical, grounding energy. It's a conversation between the heavens and the land, and the stones are the medium through which that conversation was made permanent. Local folklore breathes even more life into this dialogue. One legend tells of the stones being giants who are turned to stone for refusing to convert to Christianity. Another, older and more evocative, speaks of the Shining One, a celestial deity often described as a being of light who would walk down the northern avenue on midsummer morn, their presence connecting the realm of the sky with the world of mortals. This myth is a beautiful narrative expression of that air-earth connection, a divine messenger air walking a path defined by stone-earth to bring wisdom or renewal. The central stone, taller and more imposing than the others, likely served as a focal point for rituals. One can envision offerings left here, perhaps bundles of herbs to honor the spirits of the wind, or libations of water or milk poured onto the earth at its base to ensure fertility for the community and the land. This wasn't just superstition, it was a practical spirituality that sought to maintain balance with the forces that governed their survival. The architecture itself amplifies this experiential quality. On a still day, the silence is profound, a heavy cloak of Earth's quietude. But when the Hebridean wind whips across the moor, it creates a haunting melody as it whistles through the narrow gaps between the monoliths, the very breath of the sky given voice by the stones of the earth. This multisensory experience is key to understanding the elemental language. It's not something you only see, it's something you feel. The chill of the mist on your skin, the solid, cool touch of the granite, the sound of the wind and the cry of birds overhead, all of it combines to create a profound sense of connection. The builders of Kalanish understood that true communication with the elements engaged the whole being. They encoded a message of harmony and cyclical time, not in a text, but in an experience, an environment designed to make you feel the eternal conversation between the ground beneath your feet and the vast sky above. It is a testament to a worldview where humanity was not separate from nature, but an active participant in its sacred dialogue. From the misty whispers of Scotland's standing stones, we journey now to a place where the air is thin and the sun feels close enough to touch. High in the Peruvian Andes, perched on a ridge between soaring peaks, lies the Temple of the Sun at Machu Picchu. This isn't just a ruin, it's a masterpiece of celestial engineering, a sacred space where the Inca civilization demonstrated a breathtaking understanding of the elemental dialogue, specifically the conversation between fire and stone. Built in the 15th century at the height of the Inca Empire, this temple is the crown jewel of the citadel, a structure so precisely crafted that it seems to harness the very power of the sun itself. The Incas didn't just worship the sun, they built a house for it, a place where its light could be invited in to perform a divine dance on the most important days of the year. The temple's most stunning feature is its curved, semicircular wall, a rarity in Inca architecture which typically favors straight lines and sharp angles. This curve isn't merely an aesthetic choice, it's a functional and symbolic marvel. The wall is constructed from immaculately cut granite blocks, fitted together without mortar so tightly that a knife blade cannot slip between them. This perfection creates a chamber that acts as a precise astronomical instrument. During the June solstice, the shortest day of the year in the southern hemisphere, the rising sun streams directly through one of the temple's strategically placed windows. A single beam of light pierces the darkness, striking a ceremonial stone at the center of the temple, an altar believed to have been used for offerings. This event transforms the entire space. The stone interior, the element of earth, is suddenly ignited by a sliver of celestial fire, bathing the altar in a golden, otherworldly glow. It's a moment of perfect alignment where the sun god in Thai is quite literally welcomed into his temple, his energy and blessing symbolically transferred to the earth and to the people. This interplay of light and shadow served as the empire's most sophisticated calendar. The Incas were master agriculturists, and their survival in the harsh Andes depended on an intimate knowledge of seasonal cycles. The solstice marker at the Temple of the Sun didn't just signal a religious festival, it announced the gradual return of the sun, a promise that the days would grow longer and the planting season was approaching. It was a practical, life-giving signal encoded in architecture, but the elemental language here is far more complex than a simple sun dial. The temple is intricately connected to the natural landscape in a way that reveals a holistic worldview. Directly below the temple lies a natural cave known as the Royal Tomb, which symbolizes the underworld. Above it, the open chamber reaches for the heavens. The structure itself, therefore, becomes a bridge between the three realms: the underworld Earth, the world of the living, the temple structure, and the celestial realm, the sun. This connection is deepened by the temple's profound relationship with the surrounding mountains, or apus. The Incas believed these peaks were powerful living deities, protectors of the people and the land. The entire layout of Machu Picchu, and the Temple of the Sun specifically, is oriented to honor these mountain spirits. The main window of the temple frames the peak of Huayna Picchu perfectly, while other alignments point toward other sacred mountains. Furthermore, the site is laced with sophisticated channels that guide water from natural springs through fountains and ceremonial baths, integrating the life-giving element of water into the sacred complex. This creates a complete elemental sentence: the fire of the sun, the earth of the mountain and stone, and the water of the streams are all woven together into a single, coherent statement about balance, reverence, and the interconnectedness of all things. The temple is a prayer in stone, a permanent invitation to listen to the whispers between the rock and the radiance that brings it to life. Leaving the sun-drenched heights of the Andes, our journey into the language of the elements now plunges beneath the surface of the Arabian Sea, to a place where myth and history merge in the shifting tides. Off the western coast of India, near the modern town of Dwaker in Gujarat, lies one of archaeology's most captivating mysteries: the remains of an ancient city, partially submerged and whispering secrets from the depths. This is not merely a ruin, it is a powerful testament to the element of water in its most profound aspects as a cradle of life, a force of emotional and spiritual depth, and an agent of transformative change. According to revered Hindu texts like the Mahabharata and the Puranas, this was the legendary city of Dwaker, the magnificent capital of Lord Krishna, a celestial kingdom built upon reclaimed land from the sea itself. The stories tell of its splendor: a city of gold and silver with vast gates and 72 palaces, a beacon of righteousness and power, but its fate is as instructive as its glory. The scriptures recount that upon Krishna's departure from the earthly realm, the ocean rose and consumed Dwaker, swallowing the entire city in a single divine cataclysm. This narrative is the very heart of the elemental language here: water as the great dissolver, a reminder of the impermanence of all material things and the ultimate submission of human ambition to natural, cyclical forces. For centuries, these accounts were considered purely mythological, but in the late 20th century, marine archaeologists began to uncover something extraordinary. Through systematic dives and surveys, they found the outlines of a large, submerged settlement. Massive stone structures, including walls, pillars, and geometric foundations, were documented lying beneath the waves. Even more compelling were the artifacts brought to the surface: stone anchors that once moored great ships, pottery shards with distinct markings, and betel nuts that had been charred for consumption, all subjected to carbon dating. The results were staggering, suggesting human activity at the site stretching back an astonishing 9,000 years, with a major urban center flourishing around 3,500 years ago, a time frame that intriguingly overlaps with the traditional date for the Mahabharata War and Krishna's era. This scientific validation transforms the legend into a potent historical echo. It suggests a sophisticated maritime society that understood the ocean's dual nature intimately. They built a grand city from the sea, yet they also lived with the ever-present knowledge that the sea could just as easily take it back. The elemental language of water is encoded into the very fabric of this lost city's design. While the full layout is still being mapped, the discovered structures suggest a plan that worked in harmony with rather than against the aquatic environment. The use of large stone blocks interlocked without mortar indicates an understanding of how to withstand the constant pressure and erosive power of currents. More symbolically, scholars propose that the city's design may have incorporated concentric patterns, mirroring the movement of tides and waves, an architectural homage to the rhythms of the ocean. This layout can be interpreted as a massive stone-built mandala, a sacred geometric pattern representing the cosmos and the flow of energy, with water at its very center. Furthermore, alignments of key structures are thought to point toward celestial bodies associated with water in Vedic astrology, particularly the constellation Aquarius, the water-bearer. This creates a profound trinity of connections: the city on the earth, the ocean that surrounds it, and the stars above that govern the waters. Every aspect of its construction seems to be a dialogue with the element it would eventually succumb to. This speaks to a society that possessed a deep, ritualistic reverence for water deities. In Hindu cosmology, the ocean is personified as Varuna, the god of cosmic law and the celestial waters, and is also home to Vishnu's resting form on the serpent Anantashesha. The people of ancient Dwaker would have likely engaged in rituals and offerings to appease these powerful forces, seeking safe passage for their ships and abundance from their fisheries. The discovery of what appear to be ceremonial platforms and potential temple foundations underwater supports this idea. They understood water not just as a physical resource for trade and sustenance, but as a conscious spiritual entity, a force of emotion, intuition, and the subconscious mind. The city's fate, therefore, becomes a powerful allegory. Its sinking is not just a historical event or a natural disaster, it is a narrative about humility. It echoes global flood myths, from the story of Noah in the Middle East to the tales of Manu in India, which all carry a similar theme: a great reset, a cleansing by water that washes away the old to make way for the new. Dwaker's ruins are a permanent, underwater monument to this universal truth, reminding us that to build with ambition is human, but to build with respect for the elements is divine. It stands as a hauntingly beautiful lesson in resilience and adaptation, a city that speaks from the seabed about the delicate, eternal balance between land and water. Rising from the floor of the Valley of Mexico with a majesty that still commands the horizon, the Pyramid of the Sun at Teotihuacan is more than a structure. It is a mountain made by human hands, a deliberate and awe-inspiring echo of the volcanic peaks that surround it. Constructed around 200 CE, this colossal edifice is the beating heart of one of the most influential and mysterious cities of the ancient world. Built from an estimated 2.5 million tons of stone and earth, its very scale is a testament to the earth element it so profoundly embodies. This pyramid is not merely sitting on the land, it is an extension of it, a profound architectural statement about stability, fertility, and the deep, enduring memory held within the soil itself. For the Teotihuacanos, whose name itself means the place where the gods were created, this pyramid was the axis mundi, the sacred center of the universe, the point where the three realms of the underworld, the earthly plane, and the heavens met and communicated. The elemental language of Earth is woven into every aspect of its being, starting with the very materials from which it was built. The Teotihuacanos quarried local volcanic rock, specifically the red-hued tezontle and rough basalt from the nearby cliffs. This was a conscious choice far beyond mere convenience. They believed this stone, born from the fiery belly of the earth, was imbued with potent spiritual energy, or teotl. By using it to construct their most sacred monument, they were quite literally building with the life force of the planet, channeling the primordial power of creation and destruction that volcanoes represent. The pyramid's immense weight and sheer physical presence speak to the Earth's qualities of solidity, permanence, and nourishment. It is the ultimate symbol of the foundation upon which life is built. This dialogue with the Earth was not a passive one. It was an active, ritualistic conversation. Deep within the pyramid, archaeologists discovered a sacred cave, a natural tunnel leading to a chamber shaped like a four-petaled flower, directly beneath the center of the structure. This was not a coincidence. In Mesoamerican thought, caves were considered entrances to the underworld, the womb of the Earth goddess. By centering their monumental pyramid over this powerful natural feature, the builders were physically and spiritually connecting the realms. They were anchoring their axis mundi to a genuine portal, ensuring that the energy from the depths could flow upward and the prayers from above could travel down. This is further evidenced by the incredible offerings found within the pyramid's core. Precious greenstone beads, obsidian blades, pottery, and the remains of animals, all carefully buried as gifts to appease and honor the deities of the underworld, particularly the fearsome earth goddess Kotleku, she of the serpent skirt. But the conversation with the elements at Teotihuacan extends far beyond the ground. The entire city is a massive celestial map, a reflection of the cosmos rendered in stone. The Pyramid of the Sun is precisely aligned not only to the surrounding mountain peaks, which were themselves revered as divine beings, but also to the cyclical movements of the stars. Its western face is oriented to the setting point of the Pleiades star cluster on key dates, a celestial event of immense importance across Mesoamerica that was associated with the agricultural cycle and the renewal of time. The Grand Avenue of the Dead, running through the city's core, frames the pyramid in a layout that mirrors the Milky Way. Here, the solid, unmoving Earth is in constant dialogue with the ever-turning heavens, a perfect marriage of the terrestrial and the celestial. Perhaps most remarkably, this ancient language might even be tactile and auditory. Some researchers have proposed that the pyramid's immense size and specific proportions cause it to act as a resonator for the subtle seismic energies that ripple through the valley. The experience of climbing its 248 steps is not just a visual journey, it is a physical one. You feel the burn in your legs, the solid stone under your hands, the wind growing stronger as you ascend. At the summit, you are not just a spectator to the view, you are a participant in it, standing atop a man-made mountain that hums with the silent, low-frequency pulse of the planet. Teotihuacan teaches us that the language of the elements is not something to be read, but something to be felt with the entire body, a profound, embodied wisdom written in stone, aligned with the stars and vibrating with the very energy of the earth. Now we journey to a land where the very air itself was not just a force of nature, but a divine breath to be captured, channeled, and cherished. In the heart of Iran's central desert, where the sun beats down with relentless intensity and the winds whip across the sands, the ancient city of Yazd presents a breathtaking sight, a skyline punctuated by towering, chimney-like structures known as badgers or wind catchers. These are not mere ruins in the conventional sense. They are a living, breathing testament to a civilization that mastered the element of air, turning the harsh desert climate into a habitable oasis through sheer ingenuity and a profound spiritual dialogue with the wind. Dating back an astonishing 6,000 years, with evidence of their use as early as 4000 BCE, these architectural marvels represent one of the most sophisticated and sustainable forms of climate control ever devised by human hands. They stand as a powerful rebuttal to the notion that ancient peoples were passive before nature's forces. Instead, they were active listeners and brilliant collaborators. The genius of the badger lies in its elegant yet incredibly effective design. A typical wind tower rises high above a building, often reaching several stories tall to capture the faster, cooler air currents that flow above the ground. Its top is open on multiple sides, divided by vertical veins into several directional shafts. As the wind blows, it is funneled down these shafts into the heart of the building below. But the true magic happens deep underground. The base of the tower connects to a central hall and, most crucially, to a kanat, a subterranean canal that brings cold water from distant mountain aquifers. As the hot, dry desert air descends the tower shaft, it passes over the surface of this water channel or a sunken pool, where it is simultaneously cooled and humidified. This newly transformed, refreshing breeze is then circulated throughout the living spaces. Conversely, on a still day, the system works in reverse. The sun heats the top of the tower, causing the hot air inside to rise and creating a vacuum that draws cooler air up from the kanat and pool below. It is a perfectly balanced, self-regulating system that requires no energy input other than the natural elements themselves, a masterpiece of passive cooling. This was far more than just clever engineering. It was architecture as a form of elemental poetry, a physical manifestation of a deep spiritual worldview. For the Zoroastrians, who have called this region home for millennia, the wind known as Vayu was a sacred divinity, a purifying force and a messenger between the realms of the divine and the mortal. Vayu was not a destructive power to be feared, but a life-giving breath to be welcomed into the home. The Bagyr, therefore, was a temple to this elemental deity. Building one was an act of devotion, a way of inviting the sacred breath of the gods into the daily lives of the people. The directional shafts were often meticulously aligned to capture the most favorable winds, which were believed to carry different omens and blessings. A north wind might be seen as particularly pure and auspicious, while other directions might be associated with different qualities. This intricate understanding transformed the wind tower from a simple appliance into an oracle, a device for interpreting the whispers of the cosmos. The elemental language spoken here is one of beautiful interdependence. The Bagyr's function is inseparable from the kanat, creating a perfect synergy between air and water. The dry, intellectual element of air finds its complement in the emotional, fluid essence of water. One cannot work without the other. This integrated system allowed vast desert cities to flourish, supporting public baths, lush gardens, and bustling markets in an otherwise inhospitable environment. It represents a holistic philosophy where human settlement was woven into the natural fabric of the land, not imposed upon it. The ruins of ancient Yazd, where these towers still stand sentinel over mud brick homes, whisper a powerful lesson in sustainability. They show us a culture that listened intently to the environment, that understood its rhythms and flows, and that designed its world in harmonious conversation with them. In an age of energy-intensive climate control, the silent, graceful Bagyr stands as a timeless monument to the power of working with the elements, a blessing carved into the sky that continues to offer its cool, sacred breath. From the ingenious wind towers of Persia, where the element of air was harnessed as a sacred, life-giving breath, we now travel to a landscape where the very ground seems to breathe fire. In the Absheron Peninsula of Azerbaijan, near the capital city of Baku, the earth itself speaks in a dramatic and primal tongue through perpetual flames that have burned for centuries, if not millennia. Here, at sites like the Hga Fire Temple and the constantly burning slope of Yana Dag, or Burning Mountain, we encounter the element of fire in its most raw and untamed form. This is not fire contained in a hearth or kindled for a ceremony. This is fire that erupts spontaneously from the earth, a seemingly miraculous phenomenon that ancient peoples could only interpret as a divine manifestation. These locations are not ruins in the sense of decay. They are active, living altars where the elemental language of transformation, purification, and raw cosmic power is written in flickering light and heat. The history of reverence at these sites stretches back into the deep past, long before the current stone structures were built. The Hypogeum temple as it stands today is a 17th century construction, built by Indian, Zoroastrian, and Sikh settlers who were drawn to the region by its reputation for eternal fire. But its foundations are laid upon a far more ancient sacred site, a place of worship that dates back to the era when Zoroastrianism was the dominant faith of the Persian Empire. For followers of Zoroaster, fire is the ultimate symbol of purity, wisdom, and the divine light of Ahura Mazda, the supreme god. It is the medium through which truth is revealed and falsehood is burned away. A fire that required no human effort to sustain a fire that sprang directly from the earth was the ultimate representation of this divine presence. It was seen as a direct bridge between the earthly and the celestial realms, a place where a pilgrim could stand before the raw essence of creation and feel their own spirit ignited by its power. The architecture of the Hypogeum temple itself is a grammatical structure in this fiery language. The complex is designed as a pentagon, a shape deeply symbolic in Zoroastrian and Hindu traditions. This five-sided form represents the five sacred elements: earth, air, water, fire, and the fifth, quintessential element of spirit or ether. At the center of this pentagon burns the main altar fire, housed within a small, domed chapel. The placement is profoundly intentional. Fire, the element of transformation, is situated at the heart of all creation, the central force around which all other elements revolve and from which they derive their meaning. The celibate monks who once tended this flame lived in small cells that lined the pentagonal walls, their lives dedicated to maintaining the sacred fire and performing rituals of chanting and meditation designed to align their own inner light with the cosmic fire before them. The entire site is a three-dimensional mandala, a geometric prayer whose sole purpose is to frame and honor this unbelievable natural wonder. Of course, modern geology provides a clear scientific explanation for the phenomenon. Azerbaijan sits atop massive natural gas reserves, and the porous limestone rock of the Absheron Peninsula allows methane gas to seep continuously to the surface. A simple spark, perhaps from a lightning strike or a stray ember, was all it took to ignite these seepages, creating flames that would burn indefinitely as long as the gas flow continued. The Zoroastrian pilgrims, however, wove a far more captivating mythology around the flames. They saw them as the breath of a dragon subdued by a hero, or as the lingering fires of a battle between gods and demons. The line between the scientific and the spiritual is beautifully blurred here. The geological truth does not diminish the spiritual power, instead, it enhances it. It reveals a profound truth. The ancient interpreters of this elemental language were not wrong. They were recognizing a fundamental reality, that the planet itself is alive with immense transformative energy. Their rituals and reverence were a way of engaging in a dialogue with that planetary force, of showing respect for a power far greater than themselves. Standing before the dancing flames of Yazd, where a natural wall of fire licks relentlessly at a hillside, one cannot help but feel a sense of primal awe. It is a visceral experience of fire's dual nature, its capacity to destroy utterly, yet also to purify and create the conditions for new growth. It is both terrifying and mesmerizing, a display of nature's absolute power that commands humility and respect. These Azerbaijani fire temples remind us that the most powerful elemental dialogues occur where human interpretation meets undeniable natural phenomenon. They represent a moment where our ancestors looked upon a scientific fact and saw a divine mystery, choosing to build a temple of worship rather than simply a facility for extraction. It is a testament to the human spirit's need to find meaning in the magnificent and the inexplicable, to converse with the universe through the most fundamental and awe-inspiring languages it speaks. Descending into the cool, shadowed depths of Ronnie Kyvav in Gujarat is like entering a cathedral dedicated to water itself. Built in the 11th century by Queen Udayamati in memory of her husband, this is not a well in any simple sense. It is a breathtaking inverted temple, a magnificent staircase leading down into the earth's embrace, where every surface is a carved scripture in praise of water's divine essence. While its primary function was to provide reliable access to the fluctuating water table in an arid region, its form elevates that practicality into a profound spiritual and artistic statement. This is the elemental language of water expressed in its most elaborate and graceful dialect, a place where architecture becomes an act of devotion to the most vital of all natural forces. The scale is staggering, over 200 feet long, nearly 100 feet wide, and descending more than 100 feet through 7 levels of pillared pavilions, each step taking you further from the harsh sun and deeper into a realm of symbolic and physical refreshment. The true lexicon of this watery language is carved into the very walls. Over 500 principal sculptures and more than 1,000 minor ones adorn the stepwell, creating a vast narrative tapestry in sandstone. The main deities are all there: Vishnu reclining on the serpent Shesha, Shiva, Brahma, but they are joined by a breathtaking array of celestial nymphs or apsaras, each one a unique masterpiece depicting a different mood, adornment, or activity. These carvings are far more than decoration. They are a visual representation of water's life-giving and purifying qualities. The apsaras, often shown wringing their hair or adorning themselves, embody the sensual and fertile aspects of water. Scenes from Hindu mythology, like the churning of the cosmic ocean or the descent of the sacred Ganges River to earth, directly tie the structure's purpose to the grand cosmological stories that explain the origin of water itself. Every goddess associated with water is honored here, from Saraswati, the goddess of knowledge and wisdom whose vehicle is a swan, to Lakshmi, the goddess of prosperity who emerged from the milky ocean. The very stone seems to flow with the same liquid grace as the element it celebrates, the intricate patterns and figures mirroring the fluidity of rivers and waves. This descent is a powerful metaphorical journey. Each of the 7 levels represents a movement deeper into the subconscious, a spiritual passage from the material world above to the sacred source below. As you walk down, the temperature drops, the light softens, and the noise of the world fades, replaced by a profound silence that is itself part of the experience. The final destination is the deep, dark, cool tank at the very bottom, the actual well that holds the water. This was seen as a direct connection to the underworld, to the primordial waters from which all life emerged. Rituals performed here, especially by women praying for fertility and for the timely arrival of the monsoon rains, were believed to carry immense power because they were delivered at the source, at the meeting point of the human and the divine. The stepwell's design ensured that even in the driest seasons, the community could reach this sacred source, physically and spiritually tapping into the earth's hidden reservoirs. The elemental dialogue here is also profoundly auditory. The architecture of the stepped corridors creates remarkable acoustic properties. A sound made at the top reverberates and amplifies as it travels downward, while a whisper at the bottom can be heard with surprising clarity at the top. This was not an accident. It was a designed feature that integrated the intangible element of air into the watery environment. The echoes were believed to carry prayers and chants directly into the underworld, to the deities and spirits residing in the watery depths. The sound of a dropped pot hitting the water, the chants of priests, the conversations of those drawing water, all of it would have created a symphony of community life, a sonic layer to the visual and tactile experience. This was a place of vital social exchange, where women gathering to collect water would also share news, stories, and wisdom. It was a community center, a cool retreat from the heat, a sacred temple, and a public utility, all seamlessly blended into one structure. Ronnie Kyvav teaches us that the ancient language of the elements is holistic. It does not separate the practical from the spiritual, the body's need from the soul's yearning. It whispers of a culture that saw every drop of water as a divine gift and built a palace to honor its journey from the hidden depths of the earth to the sustaining vessel of human life. Stretching across the rolling landscape of Brittany in northwestern France, the Karnak alignments present a spectacle of staggering scale and profound mystery. Here, in a series of fields and forests, stand over 3,000 megaliths arranged in long, parallel rows that march across the earth like a petrified army on an eternal march. These are not haphazard collections of boulders. They are a meticulously organized complex, with the main alignments of Menek, Kermario, and Kerleskan consisting of rows that run for nearly 4 kilometers in total. Erected over 6,000 years ago, beginning around 4,500 BCE, this is one of the most extensive Neolithic monuments in the world. To walk among these stones is to feel the immense, grounding presence of the earth element made manifest, a colossal calendar written in granite, designed to track the celestial dance of the sun and moon and encode the very rhythms of life into the land itself. The most compelling interpretation of Karnak's purpose lies in its function as a sophisticated astronomical observatory. The precise alignments of the stone rows correspond with remarkable accuracy to the rising and setting points of the sun during the solstices and equinoxes. The grand axis of the Menek alignment, for instance, points directly to the sunrise on the summer solstice, while other rows frame the winter solstice sunset. This was not just an abstract exercise in stargazing. It was a practical, vital technology for an agricultural society. By marking these key solar events, the builders created a reliable agricultural calendar, signaling the optimal times for planting, harvesting, and holding the ceremonies that would ensure community survival through the turning year. The earth itself, in the form of these towering stones, became a medium for capturing and measuring the light from the heavens, a permanent, unchanging record of celestial time that connected the stability of the land with the cyclical movements of the sky. This deep connection to the earth is further emphasized by the materiality of the stones themselves. Every menhir was quarried locally from the granite bedrock of Brittany, a rock known for its durability and its unique speckled appearance. The builders' choice to use this specific stone was profoundly intentional. They believed that granite, formed in the fiery depths of the planet, held the memories of the earth and possessed a powerful spiritual energy. By raising these stones, they were not merely placing markers, they were activating the landscape, tapping into the telluric currents they believed flowed through the ground. The very act of erecting a menhir hauling tons of stone with nothing but muscle, rope, and wooden rollers was likely a ritual in itself, a communal effort that physically and spiritually bonded the people to their land. The stones became anchors for ancestral memory, conduits for earth energy, and permanent witnesses to the passage of generations. Local folklore adds a rich, narrative layer to this elemental dialogue, offering a more mythological interpretation of the stone's origin. One of the most enduring legends tells of a Roman legion marching through the region when they encountered the Christian Saint Cornelius, who was the Pope at the time. To escape them, the saint turned the entire army to stone, creating the endless rows of soldiers frozen in time. In another version, it is the wizard Merlin from Arthurian legend who performs the petrification. These stories, while fanciful, are themselves a form of elemental language. They speak to the awe these stones inspired in later cultures, who could not conceive of their creation by human hands and instead attributed them to a moment of divine or magical intervention that transformed living beings into the element of earth. This myth encapsulates the perceived power of the site, a power so potent it could literally transform the essence of a thing. The elemental conversation at Karnak is not limited to earth and sky. The site's location is crucial. It sits just a few kilometers from the wild Atlantic coast. This proximity introduces the element of water into the symbolic equation. The ocean would have been a constant presence in the lives of the builders, a source of food, a means of transport, and a powerful, often dangerous force of nature. The alignment of certain stones may have also been used to track lunar cycles, which govern the tides, further weaving the language of the sea into the monument's purpose. This creates a holistic elemental triad: the earth of the stones and land, the fire of the sun whose path they track, and the water of the nearby ocean. Karnak, therefore, stands as a testament to a worldview that saw all natural forces as interconnected, and that used the most permanent element, stone, to create a permanent dialogue with them all. It invites us to see the landscape not as a passive backdrop, but as an active participant in a cosmic conversation that continues to this day, written in a language of stone, star, and sea. There is perhaps no site on Earth where the elemental dialogue between humanity and nature is captured with such sudden, heartbreaking clarity as the ancient Roman city of Pompeii. On an otherwise ordinary afternoon in the year 79 CE, the long-dormant Mount Vesuvius unleashed its apocalyptic fury, burying the bustling city and its inhabitants under a suffocating blanket of superheated volcanic ash and pumice. This was a catastrophic convergence of fire and earth, a terrifying demonstration of their raw, annihilating power. Yet, in a paradox that defines Pompeii's enduring legacy, this same act of destruction became an unparalleled act of preservation. The very ash that snuffed out life also encased the city in a time capsule, freezing a single, horrifying moment in stunning detail for nearly 2,000 years. This is not a ruin that slowly crumbled into the landscape. It is a city arrested, a vivid snapshot of Roman daily life, eternally framed by the elements that both sustained and ultimately consumed it. Walking the paved streets of Pompeii today is an experience that transcends typical archaeology. It is an emotional journey into the past. The elemental language here is not one of gentle whispers, but of a sudden, deafening roar. You see it in the haunting plaster casts of the victims, created by pouring plaster into the voids left by their decomposed bodies in the hardened ash. These figures are caught in their final moments, a family huddled together for protection, a man crouching as if to shield himself, a dog forever tethered by its chain. They are a visceral, human-scale testament to the volcano's overwhelming power. Yet look beyond this tragedy, and you see how the elements were woven into the very fabric of the city's existence. Intricate frescoes adorn the walls of wealthy villas, depicting myths centered on elemental forces, scenes of Venus born from the sea, or of Vulcan, the god of fire and forge, crafting weapons for the gods. The peristyle gardens, now replanted, were once central to Roman domestic life, celebrating the earth's fertility and the life-giving power of water from the complex system of aqueducts and fountains that served the city. This deep awareness of the natural world extended to a palpable reverence and perhaps a simmering fear directed at the mountain that loomed over them. The Romans were master engineers, but they were also a deeply superstitious people who saw the divine in every natural phenomenon. While they may not have known Vesuvius was a volcano in the modern sense, they certainly understood its potential for danger. Archaeological evidence suggests they made offerings at household shrines or lararia, to appease the gods of the underworld and seek protection from earth tremors, which were relatively common in the region. They had even a specific god for volcanic fire, Vulcan, from whose name we get the word volcano. The city's very water system, an impressive network of lead pipes and public fountains, speaks to a society that harnessed the element of water for both practical comfort and luxurious display, all while living in the shadow of a mountain that could, and eventually did, use fire to take it all away. Pompeii's legacy is a profound and complex dialogue about the dual nature of the elements. Fire and earth were the creators of this city's incredible preservation, but they were also its absolute destroyers. This site forces us to confront our own vulnerability in the face of nature's immense, unpredictable power. It is a humbling reminder that for all our engineering and art, we are not separate from the natural world but subject to its whims. Yet, simultaneously, Pompeii is a stunning monument to human resilience. The preserved loaves of bread in a bakery oven, the political graffiti scrawled on a wall, the intricate mosaics and jewelry, all of these artifacts tell intimate stories of love, ambition, work, and belief. They showcase a vibrant community that lived fully until its very last second. The city does not just speak of death, it screams of life. It urges us to respect the destructive forces that shape our world, not with paralyzing fear, but with the wisdom to appreciate the fragile, beautiful complexity of our own existence, forever balanced between creation and dissolution. Carved into the rose-red cliffs of southern Jordan, the ancient city of Petra emerges from the desert not as a monument to stone, but as a breathtaking ode to the element of water. In this hyper-arid landscape, where rainfall is a fleeting gift and the summer sun is unforgiving, the Nabateans performed what can only be described as hydrological alchemy. From the 4th century BC onward, they transformed a barren valley into a flourishing capital of trade and culture, not by conquering the desert, but by conversing with it. Their genius lay in listening to the desert's subtle whispers, the path of a rare flash flood, the sigh of water seeping through sandstone, and responding with an intricate, city-wide water system that stands as one of the greatest engineering feats of the ancient world. This was more than mere survival. It was a profound declaration that water is the ultimate architect of civilization, a force to be revered, harnessed, and celebrated as the sacred lifeblood of the world. The Nabatean water management system was a masterpiece of both innovation and foresight. They understood that in the desert, water cannot be found. It must be guided, captured, and protected. Their methods were astonishingly sophisticated. A complex network of rock-cut channels, clay pipelines, and dams meticulously redirected every possible drop of water from the surrounding highlands. They carved channels along the sides of the steep canyon, or sick, that serves as the main entrance to the city. These channels weren't just ditches, they were carefully sloped conduits, often covered to prevent evaporation, that fed into a series of underground cisterns and large, open-air reservoirs. They built massive dams to control the devastating winter flash floods, known as wadis, transforming a destructive force into a productive one by slowing the water's flow and allowing it to percolate into the aquifer or be channeled for storage. The entire city was designed as a catchment area, with every roof and courtyard contributing to the collection of precious rainwater. This ensured that even during prolonged droughts, Petra's population of perhaps 20,000 people, along with their livestock and lush gardens, could thrive in the heart of the desert. This practical mastery was inseparable from a deep spiritual reverence, encoding a powerful elemental language into the very rock. The most iconic structure, the treasury or al-Khosneh, is far more than a beautiful tomb. Its elaborate facade, glowing with a mesmerizing rose-gold hue, is adorned with intricate carvings that are rich with symbolic meaning. Figures of Isis, Dionysus, and Amazons have been identified, but many scholars believe the upper-level features a representation of the Nabatean water goddess, Al-Azza. The large urn carved at the very top of the treasury is the subject of local legend. It was long believed to hold the pharaoh's treasure, but it is far more likely to be a symbolic container for sacred water. The structure's placement is also significant. It is positioned at the end of the Siq, where the canyon dramatically narrows, creating a powerful visual and psychological impact on the visitor. Some researchers suggest that the Nabateans may have even engineered a water channel to run directly in front of the treasury, so that the building would be reflected in a sacred pool, doubling its beauty and symbolically connecting the architecture to the element it honored. This would have created a stunning ritual space where the spiritual and physical necessity of water were perfectly fused. The entire city layout speaks this liquid language. Tombs, temples, and homes were not placed arbitrarily. They were aligned in relation to the flow of water. Major structures face toward catchment areas or are positioned near public fountains and cisterns, making the distribution of water a central organizing principle of urban life. The Great Temple of the Winged Lions and the nearby Great Temple Complex both feature sophisticated hydraulic systems, including pipelines and pools that were likely used for ritual purification ceremonies. Water was not just a utility, it was a medium of worship. The desert itself was seen as a divine entity, and the Nabateans saw their role not as masters over it, but as partners in a delicate dance. They listened to the rhythms of the scarce rains and the silent reservoirs within the rock, building their society in harmony with these patterns rather than against them. Petra's silent, stone-hewn halls whisper an urgent lesson for our modern world. In an era of increasing water scarcity, the Nabateans demonstrate a paradigm of sustainability born from profound respect. They did not attempt to overwhelm their environment with imported resources. They optimized what they had with breathtaking efficiency and ingenuity. They challenge us to shift our perspective, to see water not as an infinite commodity to be consumed, but as a sacred, cyclical gift to be managed with wisdom and care. The real treasure of Petra was never gold in a stone urn. It was the knowledge of how to find life in the depths of stone, how to hear the promise of abundance in the silence of the desert. It is a testament to the idea that true civilization flourishes not by dominating the elements, but by learning their language and living in eloquent, harmonious dialogue with them. Descending into the Hypogeum of Halsaflioni is not like entering any other ruin. It is a journey back into the womb of the earth itself. This is not a structure built upward toward the sky, but one carved meticulously downward into the living limestone bedrock of Malta, a sprawling, three-level subterranean labyrinth that served as both a temple and a collective tomb for over 7,000 people. Dating back an astonishing 5,000 years to around 3,300 BCE, it is the world's only known prehistoric underground temple, and it speaks the elemental language of Earth in its most profound and intimate dialect. Here, the element is not a foundation to build upon, but a sacred substance to be sculpted, a receptive, nurturing force that provides shelter, embraces the dead, and amplifies the human voice into something otherworldly. The very name Hypogeum means underground in Greek, but to experience it is to understand it as a sanctuary of silence and sound, of darkness and ritual, where the boundaries between the world of the living and the realm of the ancestors completely dissolve. The architectural genius of the Hypogeum is breathtaking. Using only rudimentary stone and antler tools, its creators excavated over 500 square meters of space, replicating above-ground megalithic temples in an inverted, subterranean form. You find yourself moving through halls and chambers that mirror the post and lintel construction of Malta's famous above-ground temples, with carved pillars, arched entrances, and even corbelled ceilings, all achieved by removing rock rather than assembling it. This was a conscious act of creation through subtraction, a dialogue with the earth where they carefully listened to the rock and revealed the sacred spaces they believed were already hidden within it. The most iconic of these spaces is the so-called Oracle Room. This small, circular chamber is a masterpiece of archaeoacoustics. A small, niche-like alcove is carved into one of its walls, and when a deep voice is spoken into it, the sound vibrates through the entire room, amplifying and distorting it into a powerful, pervasive hum that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. It is a disorienting, awe-inspiring experience that feels genuinely supernatural, a clear demonstration of how the builders harnessed the natural properties of the limestone to create a powerful sensory effect. This was far more than an acoustic curiosity. It was the central feature of a profound spiritual technology. Archaeologists and anthropologists widely believe the Hypogeum was the heart of a fertility cult centered on the mother goddess, a deity intimately linked to the earth's regenerative powers. The entire complex is filled with symbolism of rebirth. The main chamber, often called the Holy of Holies, is designed to resemble the later Greek Tholos tombs, but its structure is overwhelmingly womb-like. To enter it, one must pass through a doorway that looks like a series of trilithons, which many interpret as a symbolic passage through the cycles of life, death, and rebirth. The oracle room's vibrating hum was likely used by a priest or shaman to project a voice that seemed to be the voice of the earth itself, the goddess answering questions, giving prophecies, or accepting prayers. In the flickering light of oil lamps, with the sound resonating through their bones, participants could have been easily induced into trance states, facilitating spiritual journeys and visions. The echo was not an echo, it was a response. The earth was not silent stone, it was a listening, repressive entity. The vibrations of air sound were being used to communicate with the solid, receptive element of earth in a dialogue that was felt as much as it was heard. This symbolic language is carved directly into the walls. Throughout the complex, spirals and swirls are etched into the soft limestone. These are not random decorations. They are a nearly universal symbol found in Neolithic art representing the cyclical nature of life, death, and rebirth, the turning of the seasons, the path of the stars, the journey of the soul. They mirror the vibrational patterns of sound itself, a visual representation of the acoustic energy that filled the space. Other carvings depict animals like bulls and snakes, both potent ancient symbols of masculine potency and feminine earth power, respectively. Even the famous Sleeping Lady figurine found within the Hypogeum depicts a voluptuous woman resting on a couch, often interpreted as a goddess in a state of eternal, regenerative sleep. Every aspect of the site, from its grand design to its smallest artifact, reinforces its purpose as a place of earthly magic, where the community could interact directly with the chthonic forces that governed fertility, both of the land and of the people. The elemental dialogue here is uniquely multisensory and immersive. It is a language experienced in the cool, damp touch of the air, the absolute darkness that would have been pierced only by small flames, the overwhelming smell of earth and rock, and the profound, physically felt power of sound. The Hypogeum removes the distraction of the outside world entirely, forcing a complete focus on the ritual and the elemental forces at play. It represents a pinnacle of Neolithic spiritual thought, where humanity did not seek to dominate the earth, but to commune with it, to listen to its responses, and to seek its blessings from deep within its sacred, silent heart. It reminds us that the most powerful conversations with the elements often happen not in the open air under the sun, but in the dark, quiet places where we are compelled to listen not just with our ears, but with our entire being. Iceland is a land forged by opposing forces, a place where glaciers scrape across active volcanoes, and the ground itself steams with the planet's inner fire. Nowhere is this elemental conversation more dramatic than at Thingvalier National Park, a vast rift valley where the North American and Eurasian tectonic plates are slowly, inexorably tearing apart. Here, the Earth's thin crust allows the inferno below to meet the icy waters above, creating a spectacular landscape of geysers, hot springs, and steaming fumaroles. But for the Vikings who settled this island in the 9th century, this was far more than a geological wonder. It was a sacred stage where the gods themselves seemed to speak through the hissing steam and explosive eruptions. Thingvalier, which literally means Parliament Plains, became the heart of Icelandic culture for centuries, a place where the elemental forces of fire and water directly shaped laws, legends, and the very identity of a people. The founding of the Althingi, the national parliament, at this specific location in the year 930 was a decision steeped in elemental pragmatism and profound symbolism. The practical reason was its accessibility. Thingvalier was located in a relatively fertile region near Iceland's most traveled road, but the deeper reason was the awe-inspiring power of the landscape itself. The Vikings saw the geothermal activity not as a random natural event, but as a visible manifestation of the cosmos's core struggle. The dynamic interplay between the primordial forces of fire and ice, creation and destruction, that lay at the heart of their Norse cosmology. Holding their annual 2-week assembly here, where chieftains from every corner of the island would gather to settle disputes, recite laws, and make decisions for the Commonwealth, was a way of grounding their human society in this divine balance. The very act of lawmaking was performed under the watchful eyes of the elements, implying that their judgments should aspire to the same natural order and potent energy that surrounded them. This dialogue is vividly encoded in the Norse myths connected to the land. The Icelanders would have looked at the billowing clouds of steam from a hot spring and seen the breath of Surtur, the fire giant from Muspelheim, who awaits Ragnarök with a flaming sword to set the world ablaze. They would have heard the rumble of the great geyser and imagined it was the work of Aegir, the mighty and unpredictable sea god, brewing ale in his colossal kettle for the gods of Asgard, or perhaps even the chained monster Loki struggling beneath the earth. These were not just stories to entertain children. They were a framework for understanding the volatile and often dangerous world they inhabited. The geysers, with their unpredictable cycles of quiet building and sudden, violent eruption, were seen as potent omens. A particularly powerful eruption might be interpreted as a sign of the god's favor or displeasure, potentially influencing the decisions made at the Althingi. Chieftains might make solemn vows or seal important agreements near these steaming vents, invoking the raw power of the earth as their witness and binding their words to the elemental forces. The physical remnants of the Althingi at Thingvalier are subtle yet powerful. You won't find grand stone temples here. Instead, you find the Law Rock or Lurgberg, a natural outcrop of rock where the law speaker would stand to recite the entire body of law from memory. Around it are the faint, grass-covered outlines of temporary booths where attendees would have camped. The genius of the site's layout is its integration with the geothermal features. These booths were strategically positioned near hot springs, which provided not only a source of warmth and a place to cook food, but also a constant, visible reminder of the elements presiding over the proceedings. The pathways between camps would have followed the natural contours of the Rift Valley, weaving between steaming fissures and overlooking the serene Thingvallavatn Lake, the largest natural lake in Iceland. This created a holistic environment where the practical and the spiritual were inseparable, and where the community's laws were literally forged in a landscape created by fire and water. Thingvalier's elemental language is one of dynamic, unpredictable balance. It teaches us that the conversation between humanity and the natural world is not always gentle or predictable. It can be as sudden and explosive as a geyser's blast, a powerful reminder that we are living on a planet that is very much alive and constantly changing. The Vikings understood this intimately. They didn't try to build walls to contain the geothermal forces. They built their parliament around them, choosing to place their most important human institution within the realm of nature's rawest power. This represents a profound form of respect, an acknowledgement that true harmony comes not from controlling the elements, but from learning to listen to their volatile, beautiful, and transformative dialogue. After exploring the silent, stone-hewn halls of Petra, we ascend now to a realm where architecture itself seems to defy gravity, reaching with stone fingers toward the very heavens. The great Gothic cathedrals of Europe, like Notre Dame de Paris, Chartres, and Cologne, are not ruins in the traditional sense of decay and abandonment, but they are profound relics of a worldview that spoke a beautiful, complex dialect in the language of the elements. Constructed between the 12th and 14th centuries, these monumental structures are the ultimate expression of the element of air, not as wind or weather, but as intellect, spirit, and the boundless human aspiration to touch the divine. To step inside one is to enter a space designed to make the soul feel lighter, to pull the gaze and the heart upward, away from the solid earth and into the luminous, colored air. This architectural conversation with the air element is achieved through a series of brilliant engineering innovations that transformed the heavy, earth-bound Romanesque style into something ethereal. The most crucial of these was the flying buttress, an external arched support that acts like a stone scaffold. These graceful, wing-like structures perform a kind of architectural magic. They channel the immense weight and outward thrust of the tall walls and vaulted ceilings down into the ground, allowing the interior to be freed from the need for thick, solid walls. It is as if the builders captured the very currents of the wind and petrified them into elegant, functional forms, using the principles of force and counterforce to create a skeleton of stone that appears to float. This innovation made possible the cathedral's most breathtaking feature, vast walls of stained glass. Where once there would have been solid rock, there were now immense windows filled with thousands of pieces of glass, each a jewel-like fragment in a larger narrative of scripture and saintly lives. This is where the language of air finds its most eloquent voice. The light passing through these windows is transformed. It is no longer simple daylight but becomes a tangible, colored substance that fills the cavernous space. It paints the stone floors and pillars with shifting hues of ruby, sapphire, and gold, creating an atmosphere that feels entirely separate from the outside world. The great rose windows, intricate circular marvels of stone tracery and glass, are like frozen celestial mandalas. They filter and fracture the light, creating ethereal patterns that move slowly across the floor throughout the day, a silent, luminous clock marking the passage of celestial time. This was the intended effect, to create a vision of the heavenly Jerusalem, a realm of perfect, radiant light and harmony that stood in stark contrast to the dark, muddy, and often harsh reality of medieval life. The cathedral was a portal, and the medium of that transportation was light-infused air. The dialogue between elements is also beautifully evident in the very materials chosen. The cathedrals are built from limestone, a sedimentary rock formed over millennia from the compressed skeletons of marine creatures. This stone, quarried from the earth, is relatively soft and easy to carve when first extracted, hardening upon exposure to air. This quality allowed armies of stonemasons to cover every surface with a stone encyclopedia of creation floral motifs, biblical scenes, and the countless figures that make up the community of saints. But this earth-born stone is perpetually in conversation with the glass windows, a material made from sand, earth fused by fire. Together, they create a balance. The earth provides the stable, enduring structure, while the transformed earth glass opens the structure to the sky, allowing air and light to become the dominant experiential elements. The entire building becomes a metaphor for the human condition, grounded in the physical world, yet yearning for and illuminated by spiritual transcendence. This elemental narrative extends to the intricate carvings that adorn the exterior. The famous gargoyles and grotesques are not merely decorative, they are deeply symbolic. While some functioned as waterspouts to channel rainwater away from the masonry, their monstrous forms were also believed to ward off evil spirits, protecting the sacred space within. They represent the chaotic, untamed forces of nature and the subconscious, firmly placed on the outside of the building. In contrast, the statues of saints that grace the portals often hold attributes tied to elemental myths. Saint George, depicted slaying the dragon, embodies a triumph of spiritual order often associated with air and light over chaotic, earthly primal power. The very breath of the wind whistling around these stone figures was poetically imagined by medieval faithful as carrying their prayers from the earthly realm up to the celestial one, completing the cycle of communication between humanity, the architecture, and the heavens. The Gothic cathedral, therefore, stands as a comprehensive lexicon of elemental language, a stone prayer that uses light, space, and form to articulate humanity's most enduring aspiration to reach beyond itself. Perched high within the alcoves of sheer sandstone cliffs in what is now Colorado, the ancient cities of Mesa Verde represent a breathtaking feat of adaptation and reverence. Built by the ancestral Pueblones over 700 years ago, these multi-storied dwellings of stone and mortar are not just architectural marvels, they are a profound statement in the elemental language of water. In this high desert landscape where rainfall is unpredictable and droughts can stretch for years, every aspect of life was dictated by the sacred, life-sustaining flow of water. The very decision to build within these massive, south-facing recesses was a masterstroke of hydrological planning. The immense, overhanging cliffs acted as natural roofs, shielding the communities from the elements, but more importantly, they functioned as massive catchment systems. The ancestral Pueblones engineered a sophisticated network to channel every precious drop. They carved intricate channels and gutters into the cliff faces to direct rainwater and snowmelt into meticulously lined reservoirs and cisterns carved directly into the living rock. They even positioned their dwellings to capture runoff from the mesa tops above, ensuring that no potential source of hydration was wasted. This was not merely engineering, it was a form of communion with the element, a daily practice of gratitude for the gift that made life possible. This deep, practical relationship with water was inextricably woven into the spiritual and social fabric of the community, creating a powerful cultural bond centered on this most vital element. The heart of each cliff dwelling was the kiva, a circular, partially subterranean chamber used for ceremonies and community gatherings. These sacred spaces were more than just rooms, they were symbolic representations of the Puebloan worldview, and water played a central role. A key feature of every kiva is the sipapu, a small hole in the floor that symbolizes the portal through which their ancestors emerged into this world from the underworld, a realm often associated with the primordial waters of creation. During rituals, prayers for rain and fertility would have been offered here, directly linking spiritual practice to the physical need for water. Furthermore, the kiva's design, dug into the earth, connects it intimately with the element of earth and the hidden water tables below, making it a literal and figurative wellspring of community and spiritual life. This cooperation extended beyond the spiritual. The collection, storage, and distribution of water would have required immense social coordination and shared responsibility, reinforcing water not just as a resource, but as the very glue that held the society together, a communal trust that everyone was invested in protecting. The elemental language of Mesa Verde is literally etched into the stone walls that surround it. Throughout the region, petroglyphs and pictographs tell stories of this sacred relationship. Spirals, which may represent the cyclical nature of seasons and water cycles, are a common motif. Most poignant are the depictions of Avenue, the horned or plumed serpent spirit of water. This deity, common in Pueblo cosmology, is often shown with a wavy, serpentine body, symbolizing the flow of rivers and streams. Its image carved near water sources or in ceremonial areas served as a guardian symbol, an invocation for the life-giving waters to remain abundant and the rains to return. These artworks are a permanent record of a people speaking to the elements, documenting their prayers and their understanding of the natural world. They transformed the canyon walls into a sacred text, ensuring that the message of water's importance was visible to all generations. The dialogue at Mesa Verde, however, was not a monologue focused solely on water. The architecture reveals a sophisticated understanding of all four elements working in concert. The dwellings themselves are a testament to the earth element, built from the very sandstone of the cliffs, blending so seamlessly into the landscape that they appear to have grown from it. This choice of material provided natural insulation, keeping the homes cool in the scorching summer heat and retaining warmth during the cold winters. The design also harnessed the air element cleverly. The placement of rooms and the strategic use of small ventilation shafts created natural airflow, drawing cool air from lower levels and venting warm air out the top, ensuring comfort and reducing moisture buildup. And while open flames were carefully managed for safety, the element of fire was present in every hearth, providing warmth, light, and a place to cook and gather, the literal and metaphorical heart of each home. The ancestral Pueblones didn't just build shelters, they engineered micro-environments that existed in a perfect, sustainable balance with the elemental forces of their world, a harmony that allowed them to thrive for centuries in a challenging land. Their story is one of profound listening to the rhythms of the rain, the secrets of the stone, and the whispers of the wind, a masterclass in turning elemental challenges into a sustainable, sacred way of life. In the very heart of the ancient Roman Forum, where the grand temples to Jupiter and Saturn spoke of power and authority, stood a far more humble yet infinitely more vital structure, the circular temple of Vesta. Unlike any other Roman temple, this was not a house for a statue to be worshipped by the public, but the guardian of a living, breathing deity, the sacred, eternal flame that symbolized the hearth of Rome itself. This was not the wild, untamed fire of a volcano or a lightning strike. This was fire in its most cultivated, domestic, and sacred form. It represented the very soul and continuity of the state, a belief so profound that its extinction was considered a catastrophic omen, a sign that the gods had withdrawn their protection from the city and disaster was imminent. The entire security and prosperity of the Roman world were understood to be inextricably linked to the vitality of this single, carefully tended flame. The incredible responsibility for maintaining this fire fell to the Vestal Virgins, an order of priestesses chosen from Rome's most elite families before they reached the age of 10. These women were set apart for a 30-year vow of celibacy dedicated entirely to the goddess Vesta. Their lives were ones of immense privilege and immense pressure. They were entrusted with freedoms no other Roman women enjoyed. They could own property, make a will, and vote, and were accorded unparalleled respect, with even consuls and senators required to make way for them in the street. Yet the penalty for failing in their primary duty, allowing the sacred flame to die out, was severe and brutal, a public scourging. And the punishment for breaking their vow of chastity was even more terrifying, being buried alive in a sealed underground chamber, a fate that reflected the belief that such a transgression was a direct offense against the city itself, one that could not be cleansed by spilling their sacred blood. They were the human embodiment of the fire they tended, pure, constant, and vital to the community's survival. The elemental language of the temple is beautifully articulated in its unique and symbolic architecture. While most Roman temples are rectangular, the Temple of Vesta was deliberately circular, echoing the primitive round huts of Rome's earliest inhabitants. This design was a direct reference to the domestic hearth, the circular heart of the home where the family would gather for warmth, light, and nourishment. But the symbolism extended far beyond the domestic sphere. The circular form also mirrored the sun, the ultimate celestial source of all fire, and the cosmos itself. This clever architectural choice created a powerful symbolic link between the most intimate, personal space, the home, and the vast cosmic order. The fire within was thus both the comforting flame of the family hearth and a miniature sun, a spark of the divine cosmos burning at the center of the Roman world. It was a constant, visible reminder that the fate of the empire was connected to the fundamental order of the universe. Beyond the flame itself, the Vestals guarded other sacred objects central to Rome's identity and power. The most mysterious of these was the Pignora Imperii, the pledges of empire, believed to include the legendary Palladium, an ancient statue of the goddess Athena said to have been rescued from Troy by Aeneas. It was believed that as long as these sacred objects remained within the temple's confines, Rome would endure. This duty intertwined the element of fire with the very concepts of memory, identity, and destiny. The eternal flame was the active, living force protecting these static, historical tokens. Together, they formed a complete narrative. The fire was the enduring spirit of Rome, while the relics were its sacred body. The rituals performed here, involving offerings of grain and salt, were not grand public spectacles but quiet, daily acts of devotion that connected the sustenance of the people directly to the divine. The temple's ruins today, though largely a reconstruction, are a poignant fragment of a world where a community's sense of itself was literally kept alive by a carefully guarded spark. A profound testament to the belief that some things are too vital to be left to chance. Emerging from the dense Guatemalan rainforest canopy, the towering pyramids of Tikal rise like stone mountains, their peaks piercing the sky in a breathtaking declaration of human ambition harmonized with nature's rule. This was not a city imposed upon the jungle. It was a city born from it, a profound symphony composed in limestone, water, and air where every element played an essential part in the orchestration of daily and divine life. Constructed over centuries from 200 to 900 CE, Tikal was the beating heart of the classic Maya civilization, a sprawling metropolis that mastered the art of integrating its existence with the relentless, vibrant pulse of the rainforest. The Maya did not see the jungle as an obstacle to be cleared, but as a sacred partner, a living entity teeming with spiritual voices and elemental forces that demanded respect and dialogue. Their entire urban plan, from the grandest temple to the smallest residence, was a conscious reflection of this worldview, a physical prayer for balance between humanity and the natural world. The most striking feature of Tikal's elemental language is its celestial vocabulary, written in the precise alignment of its structures with the sun, moon, and stars. The Maya were peerless astronomers, and their pyramids served as massive stone observatories. The famous Temple of the Great Jaguar, or Temple One, is meticulously oriented so that its summit captures the first rays of the rising sun on the equinoxes, a moment when the Earth's axis is in perfect balance. This solar alignment was not merely a calendar event. It was a moment of communion where the element of fire from the sun god, Kinish Ahau, would ignite the limestone temple, symbolizing the divine spark of life and leadership bestowed upon the ruler entombed within. Even more intricate was their tracking of Venus, the morning and evening star, which they associated with war and renewal. The sight lines between Tikal's major temples and plazas are believed to map the complex cycles of this planet, dictating the timing of military campaigns and royal ceremonies. This celestial choreography reveals a society that saw the airy expanse of the heavens not as empty space, but as a dynamic, influential force directly connected to the fate of their earthly kingdom. This cosmic dialogue was grounded, quite literally, in the earth element, sourced from the land itself. The Maya constructed their awe-inspiring pyramids and palaces using the local limestone, quarrying it from great pits that were later transformed into vital reservoirs. This choice of material was a masterstroke of symbolic and practical design. The stone's white-gray hue would have caused the city to glow luminously against the deep green of the jungle, a radiant beacon of civilization. But more importantly, by using the very bedrock of their world, the Maya anchored their sacred architecture to the primordial energy of the earth. They were building with the body of the planet, and this connection was central to their spiritual identity. This is powerfully embodied in the myth of the maize god, a central figure in Maya cosmology. The god's story of death, descent into the underworld, and subsequent rebirth on the surface of the earth mirrored the annual agricultural cycle of planting, growth, and harvest. The pyramids themselves, with their steep sides rising from the underworld darkness of the jungle floor to the heavenly summit, were architectural retellings of this myth-symbolic mountains of creation where the ruler, like the maize god, could enact rituals of death and renewal to ensure the continued fertility of the land and the people. Sustaining a vast population in the rainforest required an intimate understanding of water's precious gift, and Tikal's engineers responded with ingenious systems that wove this element into the urban fabric. The city's lifeblood was its network of aqueducts, large, meticulously lined reservoirs that captured and stored rainwater during the seasonal downpours. These were far more than simple cisterns. They were sacred pools central to both survival and ceremony. Positioned in the city's low-lying areas, the aqueducts were part of a carefully managed watershed that channeled water from plastered courtyards and paved plazas. In the dry season, these reservoirs became focal points for community life and ritual. Offerings of jade, pottery, and even valued spices like vanilla were made to the Chok, the long-nosed rain god, whose favor meant the difference between abundance and famine. The presence of these vast bodies of water also created a unique microclimate, cooler and more humid, offering a respite from the jungle heat and attracting wildlife, further enhancing the city's connection to the natural world cycles. The elemental symphony of Tikal was not silent. It was a living soundscape where the air itself carried spiritual messages. The rainforest canopy that surrounds the great plazas is home to troops of howler monkeys, whose deep, guttural roars can travel for miles through the still air. To the ancient Maya, this was not merely animal noise. It was believed to be the voices of the ancestors and the spirits communicating from the other world. The acoustics of the great stone plazas and steep temple stairs would have amplified these calls, creating an immersive auditory experience during ceremonies. A priest standing atop a pyramid, performing a ritual to the accompaniment of drums and chanting, would have heard the booming response of the howler monkeys echoing through the misty air, a powerful and convincing sign that the prayers were being heard and answered by the unseen forces of the jungle. This harmonious blend of human-made sound and nature's chorus completed the elemental circuit, making the air a tangible medium for spiritual exchange. Tikal's genius lies in this holistic embrace, inviting us to understand that for the Maya, the elements were not a backdrop to ritual life. They were active, vocal participants in a continuous, sacred conversation. Carved from the very bedrock of the Giza Plateau, the Great Sphinx presides over the desert with an aura of eternal mystery, its leonine body fused to the earth and its human gaze fixed upon the eastern horizon. This colossal fusion of beast and intellect, hewn around 2500 BCE, is far more than a statue. It is a monumental sentence in the elemental language of air, a testament to the unseen forces that have shaped both its form and its meaning across millennia. The Sphinx's very composition speaks of a duality central to Egyptian thought. The powerful body of a lion represents the raw, terrestrial strength of the earth, the solid foundation of existence, while the serene, human head crowned with the royal Neme's headdress symbolizes the intellect, reason, and sovereign authority qualities inherently linked to the element of air as the medium of thought and communication. This hybrid form suggests a being that has mastered the natural world not through brute force, but through wisdom, a guardian whose domain is the very boundary between the tangible earth and the intangible sky. The desert winds themselves have been a relentless co-sculptor in the Sphinx's long history, and this interaction is deeply woven into its mythological identity. For centuries, the prevailing Khamsin winds, laden with abrasive sand, have swept across the Giza Plateau, carving and smoothing the limestone contours, contributing to the severe erosion that puzzles archaeologists and fuels speculation about its true age. Rather than seeing this as simple weathering, the ancient Egyptians might have interpreted this ongoing dialogue with the wind as a form of animation, the breath of the desert slowly reshaping the guardian's visage. This connects directly to its association with solar and wind deities. The Sphinx was likely linked to the sun god Ra, specifically in his form as Khepri, the scarab beetle representing the morning sun and rebirth, but also to Hu, the deification of the authoritative, creative word or breath, the very essence of air-given divine form. In later Greek mythology, which gave the statue its name, the Sphinx was a riddler, a creature who used enigmatic questions as a weapon. This concept beautifully encapsulates the nature of air, invisible, unpredictable, and filled with hidden knowledge that can either enlighten or destroy those who fail to understand it. This celestial conversation extends beyond myth and into precise astronomical alignment, suggesting the Sphinx was a grand architectural instrument for reading the heavens. The statue's unwavering gaze is fixed almost precisely due east, toward the point on the horizon where the sun rises on the spring and autumn equinoxes. This alignment transforms the Sphinx into a giant solar marker, its face illuminated by the first rays of the equinox sun in a dramatic celebration of balance and renewal. Furthermore, during the era of its construction, the constellation Leo would have appeared to rise directly in the eastern sky ahead of the sun on the day of the vernal equinox. This phenomenon, known as heliacal rising, would have created a powerful cosmic correlation, the lion-bodied Sphinx on Earth mirroring the lion constellation in the heavens with the sun, the ultimate source of light, life, and divine power resting between them. The winds that swept across the plateau could thus be perceived as the carriers of this celestial harmony, the invisible messengers connecting the earthly guardian with its stellar counterpart and delivering the divine will of the cosmos to the kingdom below. Yet, the elemental language of the Sphinx is not solely a dialogue between earth and air. The lifeblood of Egypt, the Nile River, plays a crucial role in completing its symbolic meaning. The monument's placement at the edge of the Giza Plateau positions it strategically between the arid, lifeless desert, the realm of chaos, and the fertile, cultivated floodplains nourished by the Nile's annual inundation. This deliberate positioning introduces the element of water into the symbolic equation. The Sphinx, therefore, can be seen as a mediator or guardian of this sacred boundary, ensuring the chaotic forces of the desert, including its scorching winds, do not encroach upon the ordered, life-sustaining world of the river valley. Some researchers propose that a now-vanished causeway or canal once connected the Sphinx complex directly to the Nile, and that the statue may have originally been surrounded by a moat filled with water, symbolizing the primordial mound of creation emerging from the waters of Nun at the dawn of time. This would have completed a powerful elemental triad, the earth of its body, the air of its intellect, and the water of its origin, representing a perfect, protected microcosm of the Egyptian universe. The true message encoded within the Sphinx's weathered features remains one of archaeology's most tantalizing riddles. The so-called Sphinx water erosion hypothesis proposes that patterns of weathering on the monument's core body and enclosure walls were caused by prolonged and heavy rainfall, potentially pushing its origin back to a much earlier, wetter climatic period millennia before the traditional dating. While hotly debated, this theory challenges us to consider the Sphinx not as a static creation from a single era, but as a living chronicle of environmental change, its stone pages recording shifts in the very elements it represents. Whether its face is a portrait of the pharaoh Khafre or an older, unknown ruler, its expression holds a knowing silence, as if guarding secrets of astronomical cycles, prehistoric climates, or lost wisdom. It stands as the ultimate stone lexicon, challenging every generation to listen more closely to the whispers of the wind that flows around it and to decipher the elemental wisdom carved into its very being, a silent guardian whose mystery is as enduring as the desert itself. Deep in the Niger River Valley, beneath the scorching African sun, the earth holds the remnants of a revolution forged in flame. Scattered across the landscape are ancient mounds of slag, the stony waste of a transformative process, and the crumbling clay shells of furnaces that once glowed with infernal heat. These are the iron smelting sites of Africa, dating back as far as 2,500 years, and they represent one of humanity's most profound dialogues with the elements. Here, the conversation was not just spiritual or symbolic, it was alchemical. It was the literal transmutation of earth into metal through the agency of fire, a technological leap that was simultaneously a sacred act of creation. This was where humanity learned to become a true collaborator with the elements, not merely using them, but orchestrating their fundamental properties to birth something entirely new and enduring from the raw materials of the planet. The technology itself was a masterpiece of elemental engineering, a physical poem written in clay, ore, and airflow. The furnaces, often beehive-shaped structures built from termite mound clay, a material prized for its refractory qualities, were designed as intricate instruments. They weren't just containers for fire, they were devices for controlling it. Tires or clay pipes were strategically angled to channel air from bellows made of animal skins, forcing oxygen into the furnace core to stoke the temperatures to an incredible 1,200 degrees Celsius, hot enough to separate the iron from the rocky ore. This crucial step introduced the third element to the dance, air. The smelters were masters of draft and combustion, understanding intuitively how the breath of the wind could be harnessed to feed their transformative fire. The entire process was a precarious ballet. The right mix of iron-rich ore and charcoal fuel, the precise temperature, the correct duration. All of it had to be perfectly balanced to produce a bloom of valuable iron rather than a useless mass of slag. This was not a recipe, it was a ritual passed down through generations of specialists who held the elemental secrets of their craft. This intimate knowledge elevated the blacksmith far beyond the role of a mere craftsman. In West African traditions, particularly among the Yoruba people, the smith was a culture hero, a figure of immense spiritual and social power governed by the god Ogun. Ogun is a deity of fascinating duality. He is the patron of all who work with iron, the blacksmith, the hunter, the warrior, and the surgeon. He represents the creative application of technology for building, hunting, and healing, but also its destructive potential in warfare and conflict. This duality perfectly mirrors the nature of the element he governs. Fire can forge a plowshare that feeds a village or a sword that defends it, but it can also destroy. The smith, therefore, was someone who mediated between these two poles, wielding a power that was both creative and dangerous, much like the gods themselves. Myths tell of how Ogun, in his fury, could clear a path through a dense forest with his machete, a symbol of civilization imposing order on chaos, but his rage was also legendary and terrifying. To work at the forge was to channel this divine energy. The spiritual weight of this work meant that the smelting process was shrouded in ritual and taboo, a clear language of respect for the elemental forces being manipulated. The act of transforming stone into metal was seen as a kind of accelerated gestation, a magical process that echoed the slow, hidden work of the earth. Because of this, the smelting site was often considered a sacred and sometimes dangerous space. Rituals were performed to appease the spirits of the earth before mining the ore. The smelters themselves might observe strict protocols abstaining from certain foods or sexual activity to ensure their purity and focus during the operation. The slag, the discarded byproduct of the process, was often treated with a kind of cautious reverence. It was not merely waste, it was the exhausted, transformed body of the earth, and it was often left in designated piles, separate from everyday areas, as if it retained some of the potent, volatile energy of the transformation. This respect for the materials, even the waste, speaks to a worldview that saw the entire process as a collaborative partnership with nature, not a conquest of it. The societal impact of this elemental mastery was nothing short of revolutionary. The ability to produce iron locally meant communities could create superior farming tools, stronger hoes, more efficient axes, and durable plow tips that dramatically increased agricultural productivity and allowed populations to grow. It meant more effective weapons for hunting and defense, and later, intricate objects of art and trade. This technological leap fostered resilience and self-sufficiency, enabling the rise of powerful kingdoms and complex states across Africa. The ruins of these smelting sites, therefore, are not just monuments to a craft. They are the birthplaces of economic and political power. They whisper of a time when a community's destiny was quite literally forged in the heat of the furnace, a testament to human ingenuity's ability to partner with the raw power of fire and earth to shape a new world. From the fiery, transformative heart of Africa's ancient forges, our journey now takes us to a city where the elements converse in a completely different way. A place where water does not just flow, it dictates the very rhythm of life and the shape of every stone. From the fiery forges of Africa, we now drift into a city where the very ground is an illusion, a masterpiece of defiance and harmony built not on solid earth, but on a shifting, liquid foundation. Venice is a paradox, a breathtakingly beautiful ruin in the process of an ongoing, graceful surrender to the element that gives it life. While its grand canals and palazzos date to the medieval period rather than deep antiquity, this city embodies the language of the elements with a fluency few ancient sites can match. Here, humanity did not simply build near water or channel it for practical use. They accepted a far more audacious challenge. They built an entire empire within it, allowing water to become the principal architect, the main thoroughfare, and the defining spirit of every aspect of existence. The result is a living dialogue between human ingenuity and aquatic power, a testament to the idea that the most profound conversations with nature are not about domination, but about adaptation and reverence. The foundational act of Venetian construction was a declaration of this partnership. The city's iconic buildings do not rest upon bedrock, they float upon a forest. Early builders drove millions of closely spaced wooden pilings, primarily of alder wood, known for its water-resistant properties, deep through the soft silt of the lagoon until they reached a harder layer of compressed clay. These submerged timbers, deprived of oxygen and thus petrified rather than rotting, created a surprisingly stable grid upon which stone foundations were laid. This ingenious system is a perfect metaphor for the city's relationship with the water. A rigid human structure is invisibly grounded within the fluid element itself, a hidden embrace that allows the magnificent stone world above to seemingly defy physics. The choice of building materials continued this conversation. The Venetians faced a constant battle against the corrosive effects of salt water. Their brilliant solution was Istrian stone, a dense, marble-like limestone quarried from the Dalmatian coast. This remarkable stone is nearly impervious to salt erosion. By using it to face the lower levels of their buildings, they created a resilient buffer against the tidal waters, allowing the more ornate and delicate brickwork above to be protected. This is elemental language in its most practical and elegant form, a deliberate choice of Istrian stone to dialogue with and withstand the persistent embrace of water, ensuring the city's beauty could endure amidst its challenging environment. This dialogue is then elevated into the realm of art and spirit through architecture and ritual. The unique Venetian Gothic style, with its delicate, lace-like traceries, pointed arches, and airy loggias, is designed to play with light and reflection. The buildings are not meant to be viewed in isolation. Their true splendor is revealed when seen mirrored in the shimmering canal waters below. The facade of the Doge's Palace or the Cardoro is doubled, its grandeur amplified by its liquid twin, creating a mesmerizing, dreamlike effect that blurs the line between the solid and the ephemeral. This was a conscious aesthetic choice, an acknowledgement that water is an essential co-creator of the city's beauty. This reverence culminates in the annual ritual known as the Sposalizio del Mare, or the Marriage of the Sea. On Ascension Day, the Doge would board his ceremonial barge, the Bucentoro, and be rowed into the Adriatic. There, he would pronounce the ritual words, Desponsamus te mare, we wed thee, O sea, and drop a consecrated gold ring into the water. This was more than pageantry. It was a sacred vow, a symbolic marriage that expressed the serene republic's dependence on and dominion over the sea. It was a plea for maritime favor, for calm waters for its traders and victory for its navy, formalizing a relationship of respect and reciprocity with the elemental force that was the source of all its wealth and power. Yet, for all its romance, Venice is also a city in a perpetual state of negotiation with its partner, and the conversation is not always gentle. The acqua alta, or high water, that regularly floods the city's piazzas is a powerful reminder of nature's ultimate authority. This is not merely a problem to be solved, it is an integral part of the city's character, a recurring event that forces a pause and a reflection on the delicate balance that has been struck. The modern Mos barrier system, a controversial and colossal engineering project of mobile gates designed to hold back the highest tides, represents the latest chapter in this ancient dialogue. It is a testament to how the elemental language evolves, incorporating new technologies to address old challenges. But even this fierce intervention is undertaken with an underlying acknowledgement that one cannot defeat the sea. One can only hope to temporarily persuade it. Venice, therefore, is not a static ruin of the past but a living laboratory for the future. It teaches an urgent lesson in resilience, sustainability, and humility. It shows us that a civilization can flourish not by walling itself off from the elements, but by weaving itself into their very fabric, by learning to build with the tide rather than against it, and by never forgetting to honor the force that gives it life. Rising from the flat Yucatan jungle like a stone sentinel gazing at the heavens, the Caracol at Chichen Itza is one of the most architecturally unique and enigmatic structures of the ancient Maya world. Its name, meaning the snail in Spanish, comes from the spiral staircase found within its central tower, but its purpose was far more profound than its simple moniker suggests. Built around 900 CE, this remarkable circular building stands in stark contrast to the rigid, right-angled pyramids that surround it, a deliberate design choice that marks it as a specialized instrument for a singular purpose, tracking the complex dance of celestial bodies. This was the Maya Observatory, a sophisticated facility where priest astronomers engaged in a continuous, precise dialogue with the cosmos, using the stability of Earth to decode the messages written in the airy expanse of the night sky. It is a masterclass in elemental language where stone was used to frame the movements of planets and stars, transforming the building itself into a permanent, solid record of celestial time. The architectural genius of the Caracol lies in its precise and purposeful alignments. Its circular base supports a larger cylindrical tower, and within this tower, narrow slit-like windows are cut at specific, calculated angles. These are not random openings for light or air, they are highly specialized viewing tubes. Centuries before the invention of the telescope, Maya astronomers used these stone channels to isolate and observe specific astronomical events with incredible accuracy. Key sightlines through these windows are aligned with the extreme northern and southern setting points of Venus on the horizon. Another window frames the sunset on the spring equinox, while a diagonal shaft within the building aligns with the setting sun on April 29th and August 13th, dates that would have framed the critical planting season in the Maya agricultural calendar. This was science of the highest order, a methodical and repeatable process of observation that allowed them to predict planetary cycles with remarkable precision. The entire structure is a testament to the Maya understanding that the Earth's permanence could be used as a fixed reference point to measure the predictable, yet seemingly chaotic, movements of the heavens. The planet Venus held a particularly powerful and dualistic significance in Maya cosmology, and its observation was likely the Caracol's primary function. The Maya meticulously tracked its 224-day cycle as both the morning and evening star, but they saw it as far more than a simple point of light. Venus was intimately associated with Kukulkan, the feathered serpent deity who represented wind, sky, and the bridge between the earthly and divine realms. However, this connection revealed the planet's complex, Janus-faced nature. As the morning star, Venus was linked to warfare and aggression. Maya texts describe its heliacal rising as a time when spears and darts were metaphorically launched against rival cities, and historical records show that military campaigns were often timed to coincide with its appearance. Conversely, as the evening star, Venus was seen as a more benevolent force, a precursor to the life-giving rains and a symbol of renewal and fertility. This duality, destroyer and life-giver, was woven into the very fabric of their understanding of the cosmos, and the caracol was the tool that allowed them to anticipate and ritualize these powerful transitions, aligning human activity with the perceived will of the heavens. This celestial conversation may have also had an auditory dimension, engaging the element of air through sound. The structure's unusual circular shape and its internal spiral staircase create unique acoustic properties. Some researchers suggest that the design could have functioned to amplify specific frequencies of sound, particularly the human voice. A chant or pronouncement made from the top of the staircase might have been resonantly projected outward, or conversely, sounds from the surrounding plaza could have been funneled upward to the observing priests. If true, this would have created a powerful multisensory ritual experience. The act of observing Venus's rise would not have been a silent, solitary event. It could have been accompanied by chants and invocations to Kukulkan, with the architecture itself acting as a stone amplifier, sending the vibrations of their prayers skyward on the very air currents that the feathered serpent deity embodied. This fusion of acoustic science and spiritual practice would have made the air a tangible medium for communication, blurring the line between the physical observation of a planet and the metaphysical invocation of a god. The most public and dramatic manifestation of this elemental dialogue occurs not at the caracol itself, but on the grand staircase of El Castillo, the main pyramid at Chichen Itza. During the spring and autumn equinoxes, the setting sun casts a shadow across the northwestern corner of the pyramid. The interplay of light and shadow creates a series of 7 interlocking triangles that slither down the balustrade, connecting the serpent head carving at the base to the temple at the summit. For a few breathtaking minutes, a massive, undulating diamond-backed serpent appears to descend from the sky to the earth. This phenomenon is a stunning piece of architectural theater, a public demonstration of the Mayas' profound understanding of solar cycles and their ability to encode this knowledge into their buildings. It is the feathered serpent Kukulkan, the spirit of wind and sky, making his divine descent along a pathway of stone, physically uniting the celestial and the terrestrial in a spectacle of light and shadow. It is the elemental language of the Maya written in its most spectacular and accessible form, a reminder that their science was always in service of their spirituality, and their architecture was the vocabulary that made it all possible. Long before the smooth-sided pyramids of Giza pierced the sky, another kind of wonder rose from the sands of Egypt, one that spoke not of finality but of becoming. The step pyramid of Pharaoh Djoser at Saqqara, built around 2,650 years before the Common Era, is not merely the world's first major stone monument. It is a profound architectural metaphor, a symbolic vessel designed to harness the most vital force in the Egyptian world, the annual inundation of the Nile. This was not a tomb in the simple sense of a resting place. It was a machine for resurrection, a structure where the elemental language of water was encoded into every stone to guide a king's soul through death and into eternal life. The entire complex, designed by the legendary architect Imhotep, is a masterpiece of symbolic engineering where the physical journey of water, from the depths of the earth to the life-giving flood, was mirrored in the pharaoh's spiritual journey from mortality to divinity. The pyramid's defining feature, its 6 distinct tiers, can be read in multiple layers of this elemental language. On one level, the steps form a colossal staircase, a literal ascent to the heavens for the deified king to join the circumpolar stars, the imperishable ones. But look closer and another interpretation emerges. The structure's receding levels also strikingly resemble a giant wave, frozen in limestone at the moment of its cresting. This was a direct architectural reference to the primordial mound of creation, the Benben, which according to Egyptian myth first emerged from the chaotic, infinite waters of Nun at the dawn of time. Just as that mound rose to bring order and life to the universe, so too would Djoser rise from his pyramid to a new, ordered existence in the afterlife. The pyramid was not just a stairway to the stars, it was a recreation of the very first moment of creation, a powerful symbolic engine designed to trigger the process of rebirth itself by mimicking the conditions of the world's beginning. This dialogue with water extends far below the surface into a labyrinthine world of tunnels and chambers that rivals the structure above. Beneath the pyramid lies a stunning subterranean complex, a mirror image of the royal palace intended for the king's use in the afterlife. Central to this underworld is a vast granite-lined chamber known as the South Tomb, whose walls are adorned with breathtakingly intricate blue faience tiles. These tiles are not arranged randomly. They form a dazzling mosaic of reed mats and hanging curtains, recreating the walls of the royal residence. But the color, that brilliant aquatic blue, is the true key to understanding their purpose. This specific hue was consciously chosen to simulate the life-giving waters of the Nile and the chaotic, fertile waters of Nun. The chamber was thus transformed into a symbolic underwater grotto, a place of potential and latent life. By being buried within this chamber, the king's sarcophagus was symbolically returned to the watery womb of creation, from which his soul could be born again, just as the sun god Ra was reborn each dawn from the celestial waters. This profound connection is further detailed in the pyramid texts, the oldest known religious compositions in the world, which would later be inscribed inside pyramids. These spells provide a verbal roadmap for the pharaoh's journey, and they are saturated with water imagery. They describe the king crossing a watery abyss on a reed float, summoning fairies to carry him, and even transforming into aquatic creatures like crocodiles to navigate the dangers of the Duat, the underworld. Water is not a barrier in this journey, it is the medium through which transformation occurs. The rituals performed within the complex's courtyards, particularly in the Heb-Sed court, were also deeply tied to this theme. The king would partake in a symbolic running ritual to demonstrate his vitality, a ceremony deeply connected to the annual flooding of the Nile and the renewal of his own power, and by extension, the fertility of the entire land of Egypt. His rebirth ensured the country's continued cycle of life, yet the genius of Saqqara's design lies in its holistic embrace of the elemental spectrum. While water provides the core metaphor for rebirth, the complex also engages the element of air through its celestial alignments. The entrance colonnade, with its rows of stone columns carved to resemble bundled reeds, leads the eye and the spirit toward the sky. The entire complex is precisely oriented to astronomical phenomena, with certain corridors and shrines aligned with the stars of the constellation Orion, which the Egyptians associated with the god Osiris, the lord of the afterlife and resurrection himself. This creates a perfect elemental synergy. The king descends into the earth, into the symbolic waters of the underworld, earth and water, to undergo a transformation that allows his soul to ascend and take its place among the imperishable stars' air. Saqqara is a complete cosmological statement, a carefully choreographed dance between the elements that guided a soul from one state of being to another. It stands as a timeless testament to a culture that saw in the Nile's flood not just a seasonal event, but the fundamental rhythm of existence itself, a cycle of death, submersion, and glorious renewal etched into the very heart of their sacred architecture. Leaving behind the sun-scorched stones of Egypt, we now journey to the very end of the earth, to a continent of absolute extremes where the elemental dialogue is stripped down to its most primal and unforgiving form. Antarctica is a world of profound paradox. It is the largest desert on our planet, yet it holds 90% of the world's fresh water, locked in a solid state. This is not a ruin built by human hands, but a landscape that itself is the ruin, a pristine, frozen archive where the elements of water and air command absolute authority, and humanity is merely a transient, fragile visitor. The language spoken here is one of immense silence, immense power, and a chilling, beautiful permanence. It is a place where water has solidified into a continent-spanning sheet of ice miles thick, and where the air itself moves with such violent force that it sculpts the very snow into waves and ripples, a phenomenon known as sastrugi, creating a seascape frozen in time. The most poignant human contributions to this icy expanse are the relics of the heroic age of Antarctic exploration, and none is more iconic than the expedition hut of Sir Ernest Shackleton, built in 1908 at Cape Royds. Stepping inside is like crossing a threshold into a moment frozen solid over a century ago. The silence is heavier here, a palpable weight that seems to hold the whispers of the men who wintered here. Tins of beef and mutton still sit on the shelves, their labels faded but legible. Pots and pans rest on the iron stove, waiting for a meal that will never be cooked. Boots stand neatly paired, and even the newspapers they used for insulation are still tacked to the walls. This is not decay, it is preservation on an almost magical scale. The relentless, dry cold of Antarctica has acted not as a destroyer, but as a perfect custodian. It has halted time itself, protecting these ordinary objects from the rot and rust that would have consumed them anywhere else on Earth. The hut is a time capsule, a stark poem written in the elemental language of cold, speaking of endurance, hope, and the sheer grit required to survive in a world that offers no quarter. This environment, however, is not a gentle curator. Just outside the hut's door, the other element, air, asserts its own relentless voice. The katabatic winds of Antarctica are legendary, gravity-driven rivers of dense, cold air that pour down from the high polar plateau with hurricane force, scouring everything in their path. These winds are the master sculptors of the continent, carving the snow into those hard, sharp-edged sastrugi ridges and polishing the blue ice of glaciers to a glassy finish. They tell a story of immense, untamable power and of an atmosphere in constant, violent motion. For the early explorers, the wind was both a nemesis and a character in their daily struggle. It could freeze exposed flesh in minutes, tear apart their tents, and erase their carefully laid supply depots under massive drifts. Yet they also learned to read its moods, to listen for its rising moan as a warning to batten down the hatches. The sound of the wind against the hut's wooden walls would have been the constant soundtrack to their isolation, a howling reminder of their vulnerability and the immense, indifferent force surrounding their tiny island of warmth and light. The profound absence in this elemental equation is as telling as the overpowering presence of ice and wind. In Antarctica, the element of fire is almost entirely missing. There are no volcanoes in this immediate landscape to offer geothermal warmth, no forests to fuel a blaze. For the explorers, fire was not a symbolic force of transformation. It was the literal difference between life and death. The precious coal for their stove was rationed as carefully as their food. The simple, cherished act of lighting a pipe or a candle was a tiny, defiant rebellion against the all-consuming cold. This scarcity elevates fire from a mere utility to a sacred treasure. It highlights the delicate and essential balance of the elements. In a world dominated by the absolute power of frozen water and howling air, the controlled, contained warmth of a small flame represented the pinnacle of human comfort, spirit, and civilization. It was their tiny, flickering claim on a world that wanted none of it. This harsh reality has, perhaps inevitably, given rise to some of the most enduring modern myths, weaving a new layer of elemental language onto the blank slate of the ice sheet. The idea of a lost, warm, and fertile Antarctica, a forgotten continent like Atlantis hidden beneath the miles-deep ice, captures the human imagination. It is a myth born from the stark contrast between this frozen reality and our deep-seated desire for life and abundance. It is a story we tell ourselves to make the unimaginable cold and emptiness knowable, to imagine that beneath this solid, elemental water lies the ghost of a world that once knew the warmth of fire and the fertility of earth. While purely speculative, these stories are a testament to the power this place holds over us. Antarctica is the ultimate sphinx, a continent-sized riddle that challenges us to listen not for words, but for the profound messages written in the texture of the ice, the shape of the wind-sculpted snow, and the deep, resonant silence that exists between the polar gales. It is a lesson in humility, reminding us that the elements, in their purest form, are the ultimate architects, and we are merely guests in their domain. Deep within the highlands of northern Ethiopia, a sacred landscape holds one of Christianity's most astonishing secrets. Here, in the town of Lalibela, the very earth has been sculpted into a vision of the divine. Unlike any other site on our journey, these are not structures built upward from the ground, but rather downward into it. In the 12th century, a vast and intricate complex of 11 churches was meticulously carved from a single, massive outcrop of volcanic rock. This was not construction in the traditional sense. It was a process of revelation, of carefully removing everything that was not a church to reveal the sacred forms believed to be waiting within the living stone. Commissioned by King Lalibela following a vision, the site was intended to be a new Jerusalem for pilgrims who could no longer reach the Holy Land, transforming the rugged Ethiopian landscape into a powerful replica of salvation's geography. This breathtaking endeavor speaks the elemental language of Earth in its most profound and literal form, where the medium of creation was not brick or mortar, but the planet's own solid body. The elemental dialogue here is overwhelmingly tactile, an experience that engages the senses from the moment you begin the descent into the rock-hewn trenches. To reach the famous Church of St. George or Betegiorgis, you must first walk down a narrow, deep passageway cut into the rust-colored tuff. The air grows noticeably cooler, the sounds of the modern world fade away, and your hand naturally reaches out to brush against the rough, textured walls. This is the first part of the conversation, the enduring, solid, and grounding presence of the earth element. Underfoot, the floor is the same continuous rock, worn smooth by centuries of bare and sandaled feet. You are not entering a building, you are entering the earth itself. Yet, within these subterranean sanctuaries, the element of air completes the dialogue. Light does not flood these spaces, it is carefully metered and directed. Narrow windows and openings are carved to allow slender shafts of sunlight to pierce the interior gloom, illuminating biblical frescoes and crosses chiseled directly into the walls. These beams of light, often filled with dancing dust motes, create an ethereal, otherworldly atmosphere. The cool, still air carries the scent of damp stone and ancient incense, and the acoustics transform whispered prayers into a soft, resonant hum that seems to emanate from the walls. This interplay between the solid, cool earth and the luminous, moving air creates a palpable sense of peace and contemplation, a perfect environment designed to elevate the spirit. The sheer scale and precision of this undertaking defies easy explanation, and it is little wonder that local mythology credits divine forces with its completion. The most enduring legend states that King Lalibela was aided by a host of angels who worked tirelessly through the night, accomplishing in mere decades what would have taken human hands centuries. This story is more than a charming folktale. It is a powerful cultural expression of the site's perceived impossibility and sacredness. It frames the creation of Lalibela not as a feat of human labor alone, but as a collaborative act between humanity and the celestial realm. The angels represent a divine intervention that harmonized with the natural world, using the earth as their canvas. This myth elevates the elemental language from mere architecture to a form of cosmic collaboration, suggesting that the very rock was willing to be shaped for a holy purpose. It speaks to a world view where the elements are not inert materials but active participants in a spiritual narrative, capable of being coaxed into revealing their hidden holiness through faith and devotion. Each church, while part of a unified whole, engages in its own unique elemental conversation. The aforementioned beted georgis, carved in the perfect shape of a Greek cross and isolated in its own deep pit, appears as a standalone monument of solid rock, a testament to Earth's ability to embody perfect form. In contrast, Betem Medhain Alam, the largest rock-hewn church in the world, feels like a classical temple with its rows of massive pillars, all carved from the same continuous rock as the floor. These pillars are not supporting the structure, they are integral to it, demonstrating the Earth's inherent strength and stability. A network of deep ceremonial tunnels and cramped passageways connects the churches, with some named symbolically. The pitch-dark tunnel is said to represent the journey through hell, a passage of absolute earthly darkness that emerges into the light of a church courtyard, symbolizing salvation. Another tunnel, which requires pilgrims to wade through a shallow, channeled stream, introduces the element of water for ritual purification, completing the elemental quartet within this earthen complex. Lalibela does not just use earth, it explores every facet of its potential for spiritual metaphor, creating a multi-sensory pilgrimage that guides the faithful through a physical and symbolic landscape of faith, carved directly into the heart of the planet. After exploring ancient ruins that whisper of a timeless elemental dialogue, we arrive at a site that proves this conversation is far from over, it is simply evolving. In the gentle, rolling hills of Dumfriesshire, Scotland, a private garden offers a breathtakingly modern interpretation of this ancient language. The Garden of Cosmic Speculation, designed by the late cultural theorist Charles Jenks and his wife Maggie Keswick, is not a ruin in the traditional sense of decay. Instead, it is a deliberate, contemporary construction that uses the raw materials of nature to articulate the most advanced scientific theories of our time. Here, the elements are not personified as gods or spirits, but are employed as the fundamental vocabulary to explain the universe itself. It stands as a powerful testament to the idea that our need to communicate with and through nature is a constant human impulse, merely reframed for a new scientific age. Jenks, who was also an influential architectural critic, was deeply inspired by the revelations of 20th-century science chaos theory, fractal geometry, and quantum mechanics. He saw in these complex ideas a new kind of poetry, a new set of patterns that mirror the beautiful complexity of the natural world. The garden is his attempt to translate this abstract, mathematical poetry into a physical, sensory experience that anyone can walk through and feel. A sweeping grass mound isn't just a hill, it is a representation of a black hole, its form echoing the way gravity warps space and time. A snaking, mirrored water feature is not merely a stream, it is the double helix of DNA, reflecting the sky and the visitor simultaneously, symbolizing the code of life itself. A bridge might twist in a way that represents the concept of a fifth dimension. This is the elemental language updated for the 21st century, where earth, water, and air become the mediums for illustrating the cosmos's most profound mysteries. The garden's design is a masterclass in elemental synergy, where each component works in concert to create a holistic experience. The element of earth is sculpted into breathtaking landforms, undulating waves and spiraling mounds that you are compelled to climb, feeling the solid ground beneath your feet curve and fall away in a way that is both physically grounding and conceptually expanding. These forms are then brought to life by the element of water, which appears in perfectly still pools that act like mirrors to the sky, in cascading waterfalls that demonstrate energy and flow, and in clever channels that guide the visitor's journey. The water features are designed to make you contemplate flow, reflection, and the very nature of reality. And presiding over it all is the Scottish air, which carries the scent of damp grass and flowers, and the ever-changing light that plays across the metallic sculptures and water surfaces, making the entire garden feel alive and in constant, dynamic conversation with the atmosphere. This is not an abandonment of the old ways, but a brilliant synthesis. Jenks was deeply aware of the ancient traditions we've explored. The garden's serpentine motifs and spiral patterns directly recall the carvings at Newgrange or the labyrinths of ancient Crete. Its use of mirrors and reflections to create infinite regress draws a direct line to the sacred pools and reflective surfaces used in temples across the ages to symbolize other worlds and the subconscious. The fundamental difference lies in the source of inspiration. Where the builders of Kalanish looked to the moon and the builders of Machu Picchu looked to the sun, Jenks looked to the Hubble telescope and the equations of mathematicians like Benoit Mandelbrot. He proves that the awe that once inspired mythologies now inspires scientific inquiry, and that both can be expressed through the same elemental vocabulary of shaped land, flowing water, and open space. What makes the Garden of Cosmic Speculation feel like a modern ruin is its inherent fragility and its deep philosophical message. Unlike the stone circles of old, this is a living, growing, changing place that requires constant maintenance. It will not last for millennia, and in a way that is part of its point. It speaks to our current understanding of the universe as a place of constant change and entropy. It is a ruin in the making, a beautiful and temporary expression of human curiosity that acknowledges its own place within the vast, unfolding timeline of the cosmos. It challenges us to see that the language of the elements is not a dead tongue to be decoded only by archaeologists. It is a living, evolving language that we are all still speaking. We speak it when we design a building to capture the light, when we plant a garden that respects the water cycle, or when we simply pause to feel the wind on our faces and ponder our place in a universe of black holes and DNA. The garden's greatest lesson is that the dialogue never ended. We just need to remember how to listen to it in the world we have built, and to continue adding our own verses to this eternal, elemental poem. What emerges from our journey through these 24 sites is nothing short of a universal human inheritance, a shared grammar of existence written not on parchment, but etched into the very landscape of our planet. From the windswept moors of Scotland to the submerged cities of India, from the volcanic fury of Italy to the celestial observatories of the Maya, a singular, profound truth resonates. Our ancestors did not see the elements as a collection of resources to be exploited, but as a pantheon of living forces, as conscious partners in a continuous, sacred dialogue. The language they spoke was one of deep reciprocity, where every stone placed, every channel dug, and every alignment to a star was both a practical response to their environment and a devotional act to the intelligence they perceived within it. This was a worldview that refused to separate the spiritual from the scientific, the mythical from the material, understanding that a society truly flourishes only when it sees itself as an integral thread woven into the fabric of a living, conscious cosmos. This elemental language finds its voice through a stunning diversity of expression, yet its core principles remain remarkably consistent across vast distances and cultures. We see it in the architectural syntax of a Persian wind tower, where the capture of a cool breeze is both a technological miracle and an invitation for a divine messenger to enter the home. We hear it in the archaeocaustics of Malta's Hypogeum, where a chant reverberating through a limestone chamber becomes a direct conversation with the underworld. We witness it in the precise stonework of Machu Picchu, where the sun's fiery solstice ray is not merely a light beam, but the god Inti himself bestowing a blessing upon a carefully prepared altar. In every case, the communication is multi-sensory, engaging sight, sound, touch, and even the intuition to convey its full meaning. It is a holistic language that understands true knowledge is felt in the bones as much as it is understood by the mind, a reminder that wisdom is an embodied experience, not just an intellectual one. Perhaps the most vital lesson this ancient lexicon holds for us today is its inherent sustainability and profound ethic of balance. The Nabateans at Petra did not battle the desert. They listened to its arid whispers and engineered a civilization that worked in harmony with water's scarcity. The ancestral pueblones of Mesa Verde positioned their entire society to capture and cherish every drop of rain, viewing water management as a sacred communal trust. The designers of the Badgers in Yazd created a perfect, energy-free cooling system that married air and water in an elegant dance of physics and reverence. These were not primitive peoples struggling against nature. They were sophisticated cultures collaborating with it, their survival inextricably linked to their ability to listen and adapt. Their ruins stand not as monuments to human domination over the elements, but as enduring testaments to a partnership built on respect, observation, and a humble acknowledgement that humanity is a part of nature, not apart from it. The thrilling convergence of modern science and ancient wisdom is now allowing us to decipher this lost language with unprecedented clarity. Disciplines like archaeoastronomy are decoding the precise celestial alignments of the Karnak stones, revealing a Neolithic calendar of breathtaking accuracy. Environmental archaeologists studying the stepwells of India are uncovering sophisticated hydrological principles that rival modern engineering, all achieved with an elegant simplicity we are only now relearning. Archaeocaustics is proving that the sound properties in places like the Hypogeum or Chichen Itza were not accidental, but deliberately designed to alter consciousness and facilitate spiritual experience. Each scientific discovery peels back another layer, showing us that what we once dismissed as primitive myth or superstition was often a highly refined and empirically observed understanding of the natural world, encoded into ritual and story for safekeeping across generations. This synthesis of past and present knowledge offers a powerful blueprint for our future, suggesting that the path toward a more sustainable and meaningful existence may require us to rediscover the elemental fluency our ancestors possessed. These 24 ruins are therefore far more than tourist destinations or archaeological puzzles. They are a global grimoire, a book of earth wisdom written in a planetary scale script. Each site is a unique page, a local dialect in this universal tongue, yet all contribute to a collective narrative about our place in the universe. They urge us to move beyond seeing the natural world as a separate entity, a collection of objects and weather patterns, and to begin perceiving it again as a community of subjects, a web of intelligent, interacting forces with which we can communicate. As we stand at the crossroads of environmental uncertainty, this lost language does not demand we abandon technology or modern life, but rather that we infuse our progress with the same spirit of reverence, balance, and dialogue. It invites us to build our own modern worlds not as fortresses against nature, but as conversations with it, to listen for the whispers of the wind, the stories in the stone, and the lessons in the water, and to remember that we, too, are made of the very elements we seek to understand. We began with a whisper of stones and end with a chorus of elements, 24 enigmatic ruins that reveal a language as old as humanity itself, where earth, air, fire, and water are the alphabet of existence. These sites teach us that elemental communication is about connection to the cosmos, to community, and to the deeper parts of ourselves. They show us a world where the wind was a divine breath to be channeled through Persian wind towers, where the sun's fire was invited to ignite sacred altars in the Andes, and where water was not just a resource but a spiritual current flowing through the stepwells of India. This was never a primitive understanding. It was a profoundly sophisticated dialogue, a way of seeing the universe as a living, conscious partner in the great dance of life. The builders of these places did not seek to dominate the natural world, but to listen to it, to learn its rhythms, and to encode its wisdom into the very stones they raised. What emerges from this global journey is a timeless lesson in balance, resilience, and awe. The people of Mesa Verde thrived in an arid land by treating water as a sacred communal trust, while the Nabateans of Petra turned a desert into a flourishing kingdom by harnessing every precious drop with ingenious reverence. The Vestal virgins in Rome understood that a single, tended flame could symbolize the soul of an entire empire, and the Maya astronomers at Chichen Itza mapped the heavens with a precision that still inspires wonder today. These were cultures that built for longevity, not just for the moment, because they recognized that human survival is inextricably linked to the health of the elemental forces that sustain us. Their legacy is a blueprint for resilience, reminding us that true strength lies not in conquest, but in cooperation with the world around us. This journey does not have to end here. The language of the elements is not a dead tongue confined to ancient ruins. It is a living, breathing conversation that continues all around us, waiting for us to listen. You can hear it in the rhythm of the rain against your window, a modern echo of the prayers for abundance offered at Mesa Verde. You can feel it in the warmth of a crackling fire, connecting you to the sacred flames of Azerbaijan and the hearths of ancient Rome. You can see it in the way the moonlight filters through the trees, casting patterns that would have guided the timekeeping of the Kalanish circle builders. We are all surrounded by these elemental messages every single day. The invitation is simply to pause, to observe, and to remember that we are part of this ongoing dialogue. Carry forward the wisdom of those who listened before us. Let it inspire a deeper respect for the water we drink, the air we breathe, and the ground we walk upon. Let it inform how we design our cities, how we manage our resources, and how we build our communities. The lost language of the elements is not truly lost. It is etched into the landscape of our planet and the heritage of our species, waiting to be rediscovered and spoken anew. Thank you for sharing this journey of exploration. If these echoes of the past have resonated with you, we would love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. For more voyages into the world's great myths and mysteries, be sure to subscribe. Until our next adventure, may you find wonder in the world around you and discover your own unique dialogue.